Good evening. Welcome to Littleton Police Community Room for the AFRAC meeting, the Alumni Field Renovation and Design Committee. Tonight's agenda is as follows. We are opening the meeting here at 7:04. We will then have some public input. Anybody that wants to be heard, please just raise your hand and come to the microphone, state your name and your address. Any comments should be made through the chair. We will then have some stakeholder presentations tonight. We have Mr. Ian Lacey from Tom Irwin Incorporated to talk about turf.
In all its glories.
Sustainable green spaces in a sustainable community. We'll plug there. We also will have a presentation tonight from youth lacrosse. So then we'll get into an approval of minutes, another public input section, and then we will have scheduling of the next meeting as far as who should be on the agenda. And we will finish up with, we opened RFQs tonight for an OPM, which is an owner's project manager for the project. We got 3 submissions, and we got 5 submissions for the designer. So we'll take a look at that and kind of decide how we're going to move forward with that and determine who is going to be on the selection and vetting committee. And then we'll adjourn. Hopefully not too late. So I would like to open it up at this point to anybody who would like to be heard. Anyone?
No, kidding.
Joker. All right, we'll just jump right into stakeholder presentations, and I'd like to introduce this time Mr. Ian Lacey.
Thank you. Well, as you can hear from my accent, I'm a born and bred American, so you shouldn't have any problem understanding me at least. Thank you very much to the committee and to everybody here for obviously allowing me to come along and talk about a few things. I know that the Alumni Field has been a point of lots of discussions over the last few months, and certainly I know that as a business we're involved in many of these around Massachusetts and Connecticut at the minute. So it's probably quite apt for me to be here in one sense. Just a little bit about our business. We are Tom Irwin Advisors. The advisors side of Tom Irwin Group is just over 2 years old now. The actual Tom Irwin Incorporated, which is the if you like the mothership, is 55 years old. Works in the turf industry and delivers sales and materials to that industry. Over time, there's been a need that's been identified by the sales reps and the management that further advice outside of what those guys could offer was needed. To cut a long story short, very short, basically I'd met the guys a few years ago, and I was running a similar business back in the United Kingdom, and we all felt that it might be a great opportunity to come over this side of the pond, as you guys like to say, and start this business and get it off the ground over here. And certainly, the last 2 years have been a challenge. Immigration was a definite challenge, but rightly so. It should be. We're coming to live and work in the country, and we should be able to prove that we can do that and sustain ourselves and so on and so forth. So I didn't have any problems with the process that we went through, albeit with a humorous smile every now and then. But we eventually arrived 2 years ago, and we got the business up and running, and a lot of what we now do is obviously based around the turf industry, but we also work in other areas as well. We'll work closely with architects and engineers, hopefully helping them to understand that when you, I thought that slide was still up, when you build a field, whether it's synthetic turf or natural turf, that there's a little bit more that goes into that than meets the eye initially. So we're working through all of those things at the moment. My conversations with Mike and some of the committee members tonight really started about 6 weeks ago, and I was asked if I could give an opinion on some matters to do with the Alumni Field. Started speaking, talking about those things, and eventually it was found that it might be a good idea for me to come and meet yourselves and the committee and do a presentation. I must admit I'm much more of a walker arounder, so apologies if I'm feeling a little bit robotic at the minute. Yeah, I was starting to joke about that earlier. But yeah, so I've been over to see the Alumni field earlier this afternoon with Chuck and Mike, who were kind enough to meet me over there and talk me through some of the things that are being talked about and maybe being planned. And one of the areas that I talked to those guys about was potentially doing a feasibility study. We're doing quite a lot of those feasibility studies now around New England. Basically, I've got a couple of slides on the presentation that will help you understand that. But basically, a feasibility study, if you like, is a sort of a dip the toe in the water and see how hot it is before you actually jump in, fully. And it allows you just to look at things a little bit more objectively, with the hope that you can find all of the right information to make the best decision. And that's the simplistic way of putting it. And that's certainly how we approach that type of process. Hope that might be a little bit fuzzy on there, but this is typically a project, certainly in the turf industry. And typically it will have all of these elements connected to it, and all of these elements that you will have to go through at some point or other. And you can see right at the bottom there with a nice green light, it's the feasibility. From there you move on to various elements, design, construction, all of those types of things. But I think it's important just to sort of, to sort of establish that no matter what the project is, no matter what the size is, you're going to go through some or all of those elements. And the reason we have it coloured differently is because normally feasibility, it starts off pretty good. Everybody's, buoyant, passionate, enthusiastic, and then it can then become a challenge as we move further around the wheel. So obviously one of our roles is to try and make sure that if the feasibility is done correctly, then a lot of those areas that you see turning from green to yellow to red don't change colour. They all stay green, and we have a successful project. That is obviously the hope, and in most cases, projects that we've been involved with, we've been able to pretty much succeed on most of those levels. So that's a little bit about just a project in general and where feasibility would fit into that. And looking at that field today, it's part of your school system here, and it's an essential part of your community. It's an essential part of the students growing up and learning sports and learning how to to play those sports and get better at those sports. The coaches, the athletics directors, they all need good quality surfaces to be able to help that process along as well. So it's the lifeblood of a community almost. So we want to make sure that obviously if you're going to do something and it's going to be fairly radical by the looks of it, that we want to make sure that that's done correctly with the best intentions. Here's sort of the type of brief that we work under and that we will work for a town or a city or a client in general. And so just some of those. It's not, this is particular to a previous client that we've worked with, but again, similarities are there. The types of things that we investigate, the types of things that we look at, the types of things that we're trying to establish. We're trying to really pull all this information together, and we're like fishermen with a net, and we cast it out wide initially, and then we slowly trawl it in with the hope that we get all of the information we need to be able to then sift through that information and hopefully come out with the right options, recommendations, decisions to help yourselves in this case make the right decision. And sometimes it isn't as cut and dried as you first think. On the surface, you may think, pardon the pun, that a synthetic turf surface would be perfect. On another, it might be a natural turf. When we start investigating and we start talking to you as the town and understanding your needs, that's really important to us, as well as obviously understanding the needs of the school system, the needs of the community, you know, the types of sport that are being played here, all of those representative sports. Then obviously we start to delve a lot deeper into that information. But that's just a sort of an example of a brief. Obviously coming from pretty much 33 years as a greenkeeper groundsman in this industry, you know, this is something that I lived and died by when I was actually working in the industry. If you don't measure something, you then, you know, you can't help it perform better. So understanding what you have at this moment in time, good, bad or ugly, is really, really important, and then deciding what you want to do from there, you know, becomes somewhat painful sometimes, but obviously a little bit easier in the sense that you know where you're starting. So that's something that we really sort of, you know, look heavily into, the performance and the testing and understanding what we have. Here's sort of a typical, if you like, decision matrix. This is something that we would supply for a client, and that would be based on either 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 options in some cases. What we're looking to do there is we use most of the brief, as you can see across the top, and then look at the different options and then score them. Because like anything, we want to understand something that it hasn't come just from a subjective comment or a subjective, you know, discussion. We want to be objective about those things as much as we can. So we score them, and we score the same things. We look at the same options, different options, sorry, and give them the same scoring process. So therefore, there's less ambiguity. It's still a little bit subjective, but it's much more objective in its overall approach. And I think it's nice that it sort of, it succinctifies everything down into, as you can see here, basically one slide. That was actually 9 months of investigations that took us to that slide. So while it can be very detailed and informed from our perspective, what we want to make sure is when we stand in front of any clients, we can give them solid, easy to understand, hopefully, information that helps them make the right decisions, you know, moving forward. The decisions that you've got to make with the Alumni field are, you know, extensive decisions. They will cost a lot of money whichever route you take, whatever the option is. So we want to make sure that if, you know, if we're able to work with you in any way or shape or form, that we make sure that your investment is protected as much as possible, and that ultimately you see a return on that investment. We can't build things for tomorrow. We build them for 25, 30 years' time, because we want them to be sustainable green spaces, not just something that worked great for 2 years and then fails. And sadly, that is a lot of our work at the minute is investigative work, where those processes or these types of processes haven't been followed, and we're now actually going in to investigate. And it saddens and pains you more than you can ever imagine to see a huge investment fail. In whatever we do in life, but certainly with athletics fields or green spaces where there are so many people coming together to enjoy them. So the decision matrix obviously is important from our perspective, because, as I say, it just pulls everything down into, you know, basically half a page. There are 450 pages of report that sits behind this decision, but in reality, you know, we know that people will read that over time, but we want to be able to give people a solid understanding of where to go from our perspective. You know, some of the things we investigate in a bit more detail, so we'll look at concerns over the current field, and this is quite apt, you know, being on that field this afternoon. And you know, what is a good field, what is a bad field? I could take every one of you onto that field with me tonight, and you would all come up with a slightly different answer. So what we want to do is we want to take all of that information that we can from yourselves, but we want to make sure that we put it through a standardized process so that we can actually come out the other side with some clarity on direction on where to go. So again, while you know, some of those things may or may not happen in all projects, you know, these are the types of areas that we're looking at. This is probably the most important thing. If I had to sort of pick one out of everything that we do and talk about with clients, this is probably the most important. Because ultimately, a lot of the times that we're involved is because the field is failing or has failed. And therefore, we need to look at presently what is taking place with the field. I don't mean that disrespectfully to anybody in here tonight, because actually what could have been taking place is the best that could have happened, given budgets, resource restrictions, and so on. So we'll look at that obviously objectively, and we're not here to find blame and point fingers. Our job really is to identify where something isn't working and then try and help the clients make it work. It isn't about apportioning blame. I've been on the end of that when I was a head groundsman and a golf course superintendent, and it's not nice. So I certainly wouldn't be bestowing that on anybody. It's just about understanding what we have and what we can do. But future maintenance, again, I talked very briefly about sustainability and about fields lasting 25, 30 years, and we plan and design and engineer them for that rather than for 5 years. So we must also make sure that we, in parallel, have maintenance that allows that to take place as well. Because without maintaining anything that we have, we will lose it. It will fail. It will become expensive to repair. A car, if we don't change the oil, eventually the car will stop. It will stop working, and then it costs you a lot of money to repair that. And it's the same principle with athletics fields, whether they are synthetic or natural turf. They need to be maintained. And in most cases, they need to be maintained much more than people appreciate. And that's our business. We appreciate that. I don't tell a plumber how to plumb. I have a very simple system and belief is that every person to their own. So other experts do what they do, and I don't question that. I just, I appreciate that. So present and future maintenance is something that's really, really, high on our agenda as something that we will really, people have called me since I've come over here the British Bulldog, and the bulldog doesn't let go, and I'm very sort of determined about that, because it will only help move things in the right direction in the long run. Something that we have designed and built in the last couple of years is called a usage calculator. Now, the reason we did this is because whenever we say to somebody, how often does a field get used, how much does it get used, there's 100 different answers. It's 11-year-olds playing for 30 minutes. It's 15-year-olds playing for 10 minutes. It's 20-year-olds playing for an hour. So what we did is we thought, well, that's great, we can understand that, but we felt that it was important to be able to calculate that. The way that calculator works, very briefly, it works on two levels. One is what we call a design capacity. So that's even before we leave this room. So we will look at the design that is maybe offered through one of these fine businesses in the future, and we can actually tell at that very point from that design, from this calculation, whether it will fail or not. And we have been pretty close with our projections on that. So before we even move out of this room, we're in a much better position to be able to say, yes, this design looks as though that it could work. Yeah.
Yes, I have a question. My name is John Bergeron, 92 Gristmill Road. Just a question: are there industry, standards for usage rates, and at what level? Probably, I don't know, based on geography and where you are in the country, where you would anticipate, above whatever 5 hours of play per day, you would expect the turf to fail, for example.
There aren't industry standards, and that's actually one of the issues, and it's good that you've actually raised that. We had, and I don't say this because England and Europe, we're divorced from Europe now, so that's a touchy subject with a lot of people. You think the Civil War did a good thing over here, I promise you, try and get out of Europe. But going back to the point, in England we did a lot of studies on what was good usage, what was bad usage, if you like, i.e. what was a level that we could sustain grass, natural turf, or even synthetic turf. So the reason that we built the calculator was to help us understand that, because there aren't any standards that we can find, and I've been looking for 2 years, that I can actually say, from US soccer, for instance, that if you use a natural turf field for 10 hours a day for 5 days a week, it will be trashed. You know, there's nothing out there that really gives us any kind of guidance. So what you find is you find a lot of industry experts, such as myself maybe, coming up with what we think is a usage capability. Well, we wanted to take that subjectivity away from that, because when I was a groundsman, I was at a professional soccer club, I was at a professional cricket club, so I was able to use the best of materials, the best of machinery, I had staff, so my fields could last a lot longer because I was inputting, you know, a huge amount of time and effort into them. Somebody's field down the road had half, if not less than half, of what I was able to do, so therefore they couldn't. So the usage calculator is designed to try and take some of that question away. So we feed in all of the information through the design process. Most fields are designed with a capability, with a capacity, whether it's a depth of soil, that a certain type of grass species, you know, it all forms part of how that field is designed to then be built. And we call that basically a specification, as we would in anything, in any other walk of life. You know, your iPhone has a specification, what it will and won't do. Same thing. So the left-hand side, as you guys are looking, is the actual design capacity, but then we add the players, the users, and even the maintainers, because what we have to be wary of is that when you maintain a field, you are damaging it. The difference is that we accept that we have to damage it to do some good to it as well. So if you like the advantage and disadvantage lists, if you drew a line down the center of a piece of paper, you would have more advantages for most of what we do to natural or synthetic turf than you would have disadvantages, which is the reason why we end up doing them. Sometimes we do them because they're a disadvantage, but we have no choice. So it isn't always just a perfect world where we can just sort of say, yeah, that box fits there and that box fits there. But when we add players into that,
Can I ask another
yeah,
question?
yeah, absolutely.
So could you use that same usage calculator to evaluate current state of an existing field as opposed to a design concept so that you get a baseline of, you know, roughly where you are today?
Yeah, you're not allowed to say that. That was what I was going to say
Oh,
next.
sorry.
No, yeah, it's a great question and it's a good point. That's exactly the other reason that we designed it. It doesn't just look at future, it looks at retrospective as well. So we've actually, for clients, we've actually gone back 5 years and looked at all of their usage levels, and they've kept good records generally, and we've been able to track the usage and see where the usage has changed, and it's helped them look at different hiring options for their fields. It's helped them look at that they have to have a sustainable budget for maintenance, where for many years, you know, for want of better words, some of the towns have ducked their head in the sand and said, well, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So what we say is, well, okay, let's use that process, let's use this calculator to help that. There are over 200 criteria that sit behind this calculator. I mean, anybody who knows spreadsheets will know that formulas can be long. This thing is like pages long. And we spent months. It takes into account weather conditions. It takes into account policies that you may have, so usage policies. Is the usage being transferred around the field correctly? That was one of the big things that I looked at when I was a head groundsman, is working with the managers and the coaches to move field usage around, because I didn't always want them in the same area because it got trashed and I couldn't maintain it and I couldn't repair it. So we built usage policies. So that's all the types of things that sits behind this calculator. So whatever it is, whether it's you know, a small sort of 6, 10, 12-a-side area or a full-size field, this can be used. All we need is the information. We've done all of the thinking, we've done all of the calculating. We just need to input that information from a usage perspective. We've also built one for synthetic turf as well, because sadly, a lot of times synthetic and natural turf are often compared. Well, we can't compare them. They're two completely different entities. So we shouldn't try and compare them. So we look at them individually, because that is the right way to look at something. And that's fair on both sides then. We're not looking at something from a synthetic perspective and saying, well, it gets hot, where natural turf doesn't get hot. In the same instance that synthetic turf may be able to take more use than natural turf. So it's unfair. And in most cases, the fields, certainly with natural turf, they've never been engineered, they've never been designed. They are native fields. And it's pretty much in some cases where somebody would have come along and thought, oh, that looks big enough to put a soccer field on. So we'll call that the soccer field from now on. It's never been designed, it's never been engineered, it's never been built correctly, and then we hammer it week in, week out, and we wonder why it fails. In the same instance that if you don't design and engineer a synthetic field in the same respect, you will have it failing. If you don't maintain it correctly, either fields, they will fail at some point. So we try and look at them individually because we think that's fair to both systems. When we compare, we're comparing apples and oranges. We wouldn't compare an apple against an orange. We would compare another apple against an apple. So, that's what we try and do when we do our work. We try and make sure that we look at it from that perspective. And then we can give the proper care and attention to each of those potential options. And the options will come in some cases through the RFQs and the RFPs that are out there with the architectural engineers firms. So the usage calculator is really, really important.
Ian, let me just jump in real quick.
Yeah. We run out of time?
No, not at all.
That's usually what I get told.
No, you prefer to kind of get through your stuff and then we can field some questions, or?
I'm quite happy. I don't have to go through this whole presentation. It's just a little bit more about the feasibility and the types of things we cover in it. So, at any time, if there's any questions, just please feel free to ask. I'm quite happy to work that way.
Okay.
Most
comfortable with.
Everybody says I talk underwater, so, just
If you want to
shut me
grab
up.
the mic and work the room, feel free to do that.
All right. Oh, well, I might just
We'll
do that.
challenge Chris to follow you.
It's when I start to dance you want to worry.
Stay off the table.
Yeah, exactly. Stay off the tail. You beat me to that as well. So that's just a brief overview of the usage calculator and what sits behind it and how it works. But as I say, it's a really useful tool for us, and it helps us get to an objective decision. So just looking at past and present maintenance, I wanted to sort of just move back to this very briefly because, we put together these types of programs. Now, it doesn't matter what's in that program at the minute, but just the look of it, just the way it works for people. Basically, the numbers represent how many times each month something should be done. So if it's mowing, as you can see along the top, as you look at it, it should be done 8 times in a month. And we don't say specifically it should be done twice a week, because you may have weather that gets in the way. You may have other operations that get in the way of that. So we leave that at the if you like, the disposal of the maintainer. So they're not rigid, but we do say that if we put 8 in there, then try and do that. That's the goal. The goal is to try and achieve the numbers that are in those boxes at whatever operation it is. But it's just a nice, easy way just to show people the year in the life of a field. And it may well be that it doesn't get used, obviously, as they don't through your winter, over here, because of the extremity of that. But as I say, it's just an aid memoir. There is a specification that sits behind this as well. So we don't just give you this and say, good luck. We actually write out in pretty solid detail everything that you need to know about mowing, which type of machine to use, the advantages of it. Should it be gas, should it be electric, should it be hybrid, whatever. We put all of that behind that because we want to make sure that that's going to help you just walk out onto a field and start doing the job. But if you really want to understand what you're trying to achieve or what we have set that might be helping you to try and achieve, then we want to make sure we put the detail there for you as well. So we hope we cover both sort of areas of that. Well, enough time to stop. Any questions from anybody? No? Good. Don't like any questions. Don't keep the questions coming. Yeah, another area that we look at, soil conditions. Now, I didn't actually dig a piece of soil out of the Alumni field, but I can tell a lot from the surface. You can tell just by the grasses that are growing in there, the weeds that are growing in there, how that soil may well be condition-wise. So, but we obviously do that because we test soils as well. We analyze soils. We analyze for what we call physical properties. So that's the amounts of sand, silt, clay, organic matter, and anything else that we may find in there. And we also test for the nutrient capability and the nutrient holding capacity of soils. So we're looking more then at what's in the soil that we can utilize that maybe isn't being utilized by the grass plant at the minute for one reason or another. So we get those reports back and we analyze those ourselves, and then we'll work up some suitable recommendations. And I think just showing you some. Here's an example of one of our soil reports. So that I think that's the nutrient capability, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. So that's looking at all the nutrients that would be in there. The what we call the micro and macronutrients. So again, the soil basically needs them all, or the plant needs them all in the soil in some way, shape or form. We look at pH, we look at salt levels. Salt is a big factor. Lots of water that's coming out of the ground can have high sodium levels. And salts are good, but also like the sea salt, if you drink that, you'll end up very ill. Well, the same thing happens basically to plants. If they drink the wrong type of water, they can become very ill and die and wilt. So we sometimes have to condition the water, so we take water tests as well. So we see what's in the soil, we also see what's in the water, and that would be the normal water that would be used for irrigation on any of the fields that we check. So we don't sort of say, well, here's what's coming out the tap. It's actually what's coming out of the irrigation system, because that's what the plant is drinking. So again, that would be the nutrient. Then what we'll do is we'll put what we call a nutrient balance sheet together, and that would just look at any deficiencies. So if we see from the reports that there are deficiencies, then we can then recommend a program that would improve those deficiencies. So much the same way the doctor will diagnose that you have a problem and will give you medicine to improve that and correct that problem, the same thing in a way is what we're now. I would never go as far to say as we're doctors, but that's the same type of approach we're taking. And that's really important, because if we just take the soil and just think and look at it and maybe crumble it between our fingers, and it's all stuff we've done at high school at one stage or another, then that will tell us some great things, but it won't tell us how much nutrients in the soil. We have to analyze that differently through laboratory, and then we have to understand how we can either improve that or put more of those nutrients in. Because if we get a nutrient deficiency, then as we have when we eat, if we have a deficiency, then we will suffer. We won't necessarily change colour, but like a plant would, but we wouldn't look too healthy either. So again, that's one of the major reasons why we do those types of things. We do the physical analysis also. We want an element of sand, silt and clay made up in our, I think you guys call it loam, I call it soil over here, but in England, but loam. And the reason that we do that is to make sure that if we are going to, let's say, stay with natural turf for the minute, and I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that that's what's going to happen with the Alumni field, but if we stay with natural turf, we'd need to understand what the soil capability is. And we look at the physical side of the soil, so what it's made up of, and then we would decide whether we need to amend that or add things to that or change that in any way to make it more able to take wear and tear from certain sports. So it may be that the wrong soil is under that field at the minute. Now, I haven't checked that, and that's just a throwaway statement at the moment. But that could be why the field is wearing out, because the wrong soil is there. We don't know that yet, so we analyse, we investigate, and hopefully we'll find the at least the information to be able to make the right recommendations. And really, lastly, we then put together, pardon the pun, a ballpark sort of figure. And it really is a ballpark in this case. But yeah, we put a figure together. Now that isn't something that you can, hang us on as such. We make that very clear that this is just a representative, figure. But they're not too far away either. There are some unknowns to us when we carry out a feasibility because we can't know some things. It doesn't matter how long we investigate. Well, there is just some things we never find out or we don't understand. But we'll put together an idea of what something should cost and again, a ballpark figure for that, just so that you as a client potentially would understand the type of investment you may have to make. And that's something that I know a lot of consultants and advisors shy away from. They like to sit on the fence, and that's not being disrespectful to them. That's their way of doing things. We like to say, no, we think it's going to cost in this region. And we'll live by that. And sometimes we'll probably die by that as well. But I think that's better for us as a business to be as transparent and as honest and for you to be able to get as much out of us as you can for for what you're paying for. It's an investment. And we want to make sure that we can give you a return on that investment. So we'll put together, some figures, and they'll be pretty accurate figures. That isn't just sort of, finger in the air, which way is the wind blowing. We do a lot of research behind that slide. But again, we don't want to be, say that is exactly what it will be, because there's often things that are out of our control that we couldn't foresee at that time. And lastly, whether it's synthetic, natural turf, whether it's baseball, American football, soccer, football as I call it in England, how do you get American football out of a ball that you throw? I just don't understand that. Sorry. That's me not getting paid.
Down that road.
Appreciate it.
Rugby was already taken.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. But, so, I mean, there is a lot more than meets the eye. No more than any other... I'll start again. No more than any other industry and no more than any other profession. So we don't profess to be better or worse than anybody, but what we do is important. What we do obviously helps communities, helps athletes. I was fortunate enough to spend 6 months as a professional soccer player when I was 16 years old, and it's not a sob story, but sadly I broke my ankle. But we played on some horrifically bad surfaces. And ironically, when you sat in a hospital bed with your leg up in the air, as we were in those days, they didn't have the type of medical care we have now. It sort of dawned on me that, I'd like to be in this industry and I'd like to do something about it. I mean, I'd literally just been told I probably wasn't going to play football professionally ever again. So, I had to think of something to do. But no, on a serious note, it sort of gave me, I wanted to be involved in the industry. I wanted to be part of that. So, I've had a phenomenal career, and long may it continue for me, obviously. It's brought me to these fair waters, and, as I say, it's a fabulous place to live and work, and people are absolutely fantastic people. So, yeah.
That's great. Thank you. No, that's fantastic. All right. Denise, do you mind just hitting that light for me, please? Called it to action. No, that one works too. Thank you. All right, I'd like to open it up to the members of the board first, and then we'll open it up if anybody from the
Absolutely, yeah.
Viewing audience has any questions. Tom, want to get started?
Yeah, I'm curious, have you built any natural surface fields that accommodated multiple sports such as soccer, actually football, American football,
Yeah.
Lacrosse,
Yeah.
field hockey, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, I think just, we're very much alike as people either side of this ocean, so, so is our industry, and so is our usage. We have multi-use fields in the UK and Europe in much the same way, happens over here. And if I'm being honest, some people say we're ahead of that curve now, that you are now going round. We probably are. That's, again, not meant in any disrespect. I think what we learnt is what you're now trying to learn is how to use a field for multiple sports and try and keep it in the best condition you can, and try and have it, at least safe for use, I would say, at a bare minimum. And I think, I will say this, that the managing expectations is important. I think, we're talking about a natural living organism in natural turf and grass and soil. It will not survive constant pounding, constant usage. Neither will a synthetic turf field. It may look on the surface like it will, but it's a carpet. A carpet will wear out just like this carpet we're walking on night and day. It will wear out. It looks different, but it's in essence it's the same thing. They still wear out. I think what the technology for natural turf has moved very, very quickly over the years, in the sense of, well, we realise now we've got holes in our fields. What are we going to do with that? So we brought out what we call reinforcement systems. They started off with what we call fibre sands, and basically that was goat hair initially that was mixed into sand that was then put on the field that the grass was then grown through. And the idea was that the goat hairs, the grass roots would wrap themselves around the goat hairs, and that would add stability to the surface. And it was a phenomenal success. I mean, it turned, as I call them, Sahara deserts in the summer and mud baths in the winter into, you've probably seen the English soccer Premier League fields. They were all, if you see any of the archive stuff in the 70s and 80s, they were just mud. There was hardly a field you could see. And things like fibre sand, and then we had what we call fibre elastic, which was basically elastic bands that were then mixed into sand and soil and then grass grown. Same principle. The fibre elastic was designed to be more soft because fibre sand was very hard under the foot. So a lot of players didn't like it when they'd gone from soft turf soil fields to hard sand fields. And so again, we learnt from that. Then we moved on to, ironically, stitching synthetic turf into soil and sand, and we called that the Deso Grassmaster system, and that's more in line with what we call in the hybrid system nowadays. That's had a huge effect on the English Premier League fields. I mean, we get bad winters. We don't get cold and snow like you guys get, but we get a huge amount of rain through the winter, and we play a winter sport. So it's the worst conditions you can possibly put those fields through, and they hold together phenomenally well, and it's not a huge investment either. It's nothing like that you would think cost-wise. So, we now have more or different types of hybrid systems that are coming in from Europe now. There's a great system that's being trialled over in Italy at the minute. It's trialled in Spain as well. A good friend of mine at Real Madrid is trialling it. He's had phenomenal success. And okay, you might say Real Madrid, richest soccer club in the world, but he has a budget like everybody else, and so he's always looking for innovative ways to grow grass in a stadium that doesn't allow grass to grow in, as well as his training facilities where he gets a huge amount of use. Those fields probably get used more than any field in this country. And he can only give them so much time and attention. So I think the developments in natural turf have been huge and been quick and have gotten us to a point where we don't necessarily just have to look at synthetic as the only option. We can look at a number of different options with natural turf. But I'll go back to a slide I put on earlier. If you're not going to maintain either of those systems, any of those systems, they will fail. And that's the cold hard truth from my perspective. When you're looking, just to finish the answer off to your question, when you're looking at multi-use, what you've got to think about with multi-use is having multi-uses that are similar. If you want to go from something that wants to use what we call a high height of cut, so a high grass length, and then you put another usage on there that uses a low grass length, then if it's a natural turf, it can accommodate that because you can cut it down. If it's a synthetic turf, you can't. Once you pick the length and depth of your fibre, you are stuck with that for 8-9 years until it lies flat or lays down or wears away. And again, I'm not trying to make a divide here between the both. I'm just sort of trying to give you as honest a can view of either side. But I would say that if you're going to go with multi-use, try and pick sports that use the field in a similar way where possible. Because then, first of all, it makes your maintenance and your repairing and your what we call renovation more efficient. You're not trying to you're not trying to cover so much of a broad spectrum. You're covering 3 or 4 sports that play a similar way. They may play totally different as a sport, but their requirements are similar. So I would say that would be one big thing I would suggest straight away. And I think the case of the Alumni field, just talking to the guys earlier, I think the anticipation is that you want to use it for everything. It's your star field. I absolutely get that. But it will only work so well when you pick the things that can play on it well. So while you might be able to say it's multi-use and we can have that sport on there, actually one sport somewhere along the line will become a detriment to that, either in the way you need to maintain the field or the way you need to prepare the field for that play to take place. So, part of a feasibility study looks at that. It analyzes that, and it will say pretty much what I've probably just said to you within reason. Not don't do it, but if you're going to do it, be aware, manage the expectation of people that one sport may not come out of it as well as some of the other sports, because you're trying to keep too many sports happy on one surface. My obvious solution to that, just standing here, would be to spread some of those sports around the town facilities where possible. Now, that's easy for me to say standing here. I'm not a resident of the town. I don't, you have children, grandchildren, I'm sure that are at these schools, and you have a community use as well. So you want to get the maximum use you can out of those fields. But just think about that. I think would be something we would say to you through a feasibility study. Is before you dive in to make a decision, and the designers, a feasibility study can help the designers make sure that they've designed the right field for you. We need to take what you need. Now, if what you need goes against what we think would work, we'll tell you that. It doesn't mean to say that we won't help you design it and build it and use it, but we'll tell you that. But we'll find the solutions for you. We'll find the best solutions through maintenance, through management of that field, rotation of usage, things like that. So, just some things to be wary of when you're thinking about those types of things.
Can I follow that? So, we spoke about what we're looking to do there.
Yeah.
Now, clearly, field hockey is probably the most unique sport, but we do want to play it there because the options that we have available for field hockey right now are thin. If we were to do synthetic, that's where we want to play it. Because of the nature of the game.
Yep.
Now, would your recommendation be, because that's our only football field.
Yep.
So, field hockey and football for sure. Lacrosse, we've talked about, the damage that boys lacrosse certainly, and you saw Alumni with the goal mouths for girls lacrosse. Soccer is also a sport that we have huge numbers in soccer in this town. So that's another sport that we clearly want to try to get on that field. Were it to go synthetic. So if we do go with natural, based on some of our conversations and what you put before us, we clearly will have to do some mitigation and determine that these sports cannot be played on this field. And we'd have to, like you said, move around, practice in different areas, and I think some of I know the coaches do that as much as possible. What are the sports, would you say to design, let me back it up. If we were to go synthetic, would you recommend designing the field at the field hockey level, football level, soccer level, lacrosse level? I mean, what are the most common, you said, put sports that are the most like?
I would say that, and this is if you like, the anomaly of field hockey, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, but it needs a relatively flat, level free from undulations or debris or holes or divots or whatever you want to call them. For a surface, it's funny, in England we went through the same thing, and do you know what happened is we all had, I actually managed a natural turf hockey field. It was a pain in the bum, if I'm being honest. I was worried every single day because I couldn't put the maintenance into it that was required. And it was amazing that we had a great Olympic Games in 1988 as a hockey nation, and we won the gold medal, and suddenly everything went synthetic literally the next day. The governing body of hockey came out the next day, the minute that those medals were around the necks, and said, right, we're going to synthetic for all levels of hockey. It decimated the game overnight. Because in 1988 there were hardly any synthetic surfaces. The ones that were there were already packed with people, so you couldn't get any time. So, hockey clubs around the country folded literally overnight because of it. It was one of the worst decisions that the British Hockey Association made. It was probably the right decision. It was just the wrong way that they made it and implemented it. But I would say if you've probably got to look, if that's going to go synthetic, let's say, and we're talking hypothetically, as you say, you've probably got to think about that field hockey's got to be the main sport that would be played on there, because that requires a smaller a pile that's different. Now, it's not to say you couldn't play other sports on it. You could play football, you could play lacrosse. Again, fast feet. Lacrosse is a fast feet. American football is fast feet in all small areas. The problem with it is that you won't have the depth of pile to protect the backing of the carpet. And you're going to need as much of an infill, whatever that is consistent of, as possible. And it would probably increase your maintenance by, at least a third more than you think. Because the rubber would be kicked around so often that you'd have to brush it back into place more often. So I would say that that's the sort of the things that, when we talk about that expectation, is if you're going to go with it, if you put a 70mm pile down, you won't be playing hockey on there that's of any good standard to me. There's too much friction on the ball. A lot of hockey in England is played on water-based artificials to reduce the friction, so the ball can actually run across that surface at the speed it should. When you've got all of that rubber and all of that synthetic surface and carpet and pile, what happens is it creates friction electricity and it slows the ball down. And you would almost be digging it out like you're hitting a golf shot in some cases, if you don't get the right type depth of pile. So again, manage the expectation. It's not something that you can't do, but I would just say that, if field hockey is one of the big aims to have and the big visions for the town to have for that field, then probably go with that and then suffer the consequences of that in a way by using it for other sports, but facing the fact that you might, you could wear that carpet out a lot quicker. And I would probably say and I'm not scaremongering at all, because, I've had synthetic surfaces when I was a groundsman. And they were fantastic for me because I used them to keep my natural turf fields in good condition. So I threw them on there all the time when it was rain and anything, which I ended up paying for because I ruined the synthetic a lot quicker than was planned. But I'm not trying to scaremonger. I'm just trying to make sure that when I leave here tonight, you guys have a full understanding of where I think you should be. And what you should be thinking of, that's all. Because I want the right thing for you guys. Whether we end up working for you or not, I'm going to walk away tonight. I still want the right decision for the town, for the students, for the young people, for the community, because ultimately it's our industry. And I'm proud of the industry. So I want to make sure that whatever you have here works for you. But I would just say, the investigation now, I won't call it due diligence because you've already done a lot of that. I'm not maybe that's the wrong word, but the due diligence of just analysing all of those options now, and then, if I go back to this, go back to that decision, matrix. If you've analysed all of this information, and again, it doesn't have to be us that does it, but somebody should do it, I think. and you come up with the highest score on that right-hand side, that's your best way forward. You know, we scored that 3 times because we kept on thinking, no, that's not right. But every time we came back to the same scoring, the same decision. So we were absolute in our understanding of what we wanted to portray to the client. So again, you'll have a matrix that can look like that. You know, but when you get there, just make sure that you've done that for me. That would be the simplest thing. This is a huge investment, you know, and this is a legacy for the town. You know, and you want this to be a legacy that everybody remembers for great reasons, not for, oh, well, we should have done that a bit differently, and that didn't quite work. And that's easy. You'll always find people who will sort of throw the stone at the glass house, as I say, you know, from the outside. But you learn to live with people like that, because that's people, you know. But I think that the town really would appreciate the fact that you're going through this due diligence as you're doing now, to come up with the right decisions on things like that.
And it sounds like, would a hybrid surface, where if we were to play field hockey on that surface, we could cut it very short, and then if we were to play American football on that surface, let it grow out a little bit, would that work?
Yeah, it would, and I'm not saying that, you know, doing it on a synthetic surface wouldn't either. It would work, and I'm going to keep reminding you of what I said a bit earlier about the maintenance, because the key to everything you're going to do, we can build a great field, you can have the best field that money can buy, but if you don't maintain it in that way and with that in mind, then it will fail. And that's what I've seen in many towns, and as I say, it's not disrespectful the way I say it, because I understand that, you know, taxes are taxes, money's tight, nobody really wants to spend any more, you know, on the fields than is necessary. I appreciate that. While I might think differently because I'm in the profession, I understand that from being a resident myself. But I think the maintenance is the key to this. You know, adaptability, yes. You've got more adaptability with natural turf. It can regenerate itself. You can replant it. If a carpet wears, you've got to replace it or replace areas of it. Now that can be done as well. And that can be done very professionally and more than adequately for what you'll need. But as I say, whichever way that decision finally goes, think long term about the maintenance. Don't think about, because a new synthetic, I've walked on new synthetics, you know, all over Africa when I worked for FIFA and places like that. They are beautiful when you walk on them. They are, I mean, I've got to say it. And then when you go back 3 years later and you see the state of them, because it wasn't litter picked every single day. You have to litter pick a synthetic surface every single day of its life, because any debris has got nowhere to go. It doesn't get absorbed into the soil as it would with natural turf. It sits in the rubber, it sits in the sand, and it will slow down drainage, because they are your 2 areas of drainage capability, is the rubber crumb or a variation of that, and the sand. The sand acts as mainly 2 things. One, it will weight down the carpet, because we're putting it onto what we call a dynamic base. It's called something different now, but I know it as a dynamic base, which is basically crushed rubble or crushed stone, and it's just compacted together. It's very angular in its shape normally, and therefore it compacts together, but it leaves space that water and well, mainly water can move through. If you lose that capability, the drainage capability, then you will start getting the synthetic field puddling. You can do the same thing with natural turf if you don't aerate it. If we don't spike it, if we don't keep it open, it will puddle. So it's the same principle, really, that's happening on both those things. We just maintain it in a slightly different way. But yes, there are advantages to having a hybrid system. Again, it comes with its maintenance cost, as does a synthetic field. You know, most people that we work with, synthetic fields are severely under-maintained, and therefore they fail. I was on a field a few weeks ago, and this is truth, that was 3 years old that looked 8 years old. And when I told the town manager that he is going to be replacing this field in about 2 years' time, he was horrified, well, I've got to get 8 years out of it. I said, well, you will get 8 years out of it, but it won't be of any use to you. It will be a very poor surface that people will start sliding around on because they didn't maintain it. It's as simple as that. That's all it's down to. It's very rarely down to a poor construction or a poor installation. Those guys are pretty good at what they do, you know, whether it's natural or synthetic. They're pretty good. It normally fails in the aftercare. And people see this new field and they think, great, you know, we don't have to do anything to it. Maybe they were even told they didn't have to do anything to it, that it was all weather, that it was multi-use, that it, you know, you can play on it 24 hours a day. Well, who's going to play on it 24 hours a day? Who's going to play on it from 1 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the morning? Nobody. So it's not 24 hours use. It's at most 15 hours a week, a day use. So, you know, let's be honest about that. Natural turf, same principle. You're not going to play in it in the middle of the night, even if you do have floodlights, because nobody will be there. So the honesty is that you'll play on it normally from school time right through to, say, 9, 10 o'clock if there's a light restriction, you know, from a residency perspective. So again, that's another thing that may not influence that decision. Yeah.
Good talk.
Yeah, thank you.
Carl, you have any questions?
No.
Good. Michael?
How many projects have you guys been associated with since you started this side of Tom Road?
Probably about 7 or 8.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a list that I can send to you guys, like a reference list of all the projects we've been involved with.
Have any of those projects have reached a conclusion that synthetic is best for that community?
Well, there's one that's very close, and that's the city of Somerville at the moment. That's been a challenge to say the least. That really polarised that city.
Dilboy Field?
Yeah, that really polarised the city. And I'll tell you how that came about, because this is probably a lesson that actually you don't have to learn here, because you've been very transparent. But that came about because people made a decision without including the public. And when the public actually then said, hold on, we're going to put tyres, shredded tyres and plastic in this school for 7 and 8 year olds, the town literally said, okay, all right, you've made your point now, be quiet. And it was a group of mothers that actually really took offence to that and said, no, we're not accepting that. And ironically, they contacted me initially and asked me if I'd talked to them and talked to the mayor and talked to other people involved. And the mayor wouldn't meet with me, which is fine, and I appreciate that. You know, I was nothing to him at the time. But the mothers formed a group. What's it called? Green Open Spaces Somerville or something like Green Space Somerville or something they called it. And they've really become a powerful lobby in Somerville, and very much so that something that was pretty much guaranteed to be synthetic is now being revised to potentially be natural turf. Now, I haven't had a huge input past what I did for them, but I gave them some understanding of the implications of both sides. I balanced the argument for them. So that's one that's sort of more or less there. There are some that we've been involved with that have just gone with synthetic. And yeah, we've just had to accept that's the way it is. We disagreed with that, but not because it was synthetic, but because we thought it was the wrong choice. Mm-hmm. And we told the town that, but sometimes you have to move forward and let the town get on with what they want to do with that.
Yeah.
How is it the wrong choice? Or why did you think it was the wrong choice?
Just simply because, I'll use a term, we thought they were just trying to keep up with the Joneses. The town next to them had a synthetic field that they were having a lot of problems with, and we said that to them. We said, look, this town's having a lot of problems. Again, we went back to maintenance. Is the maintenance there? Are you going to be able to input that maintenance? Because if you're not, that synthetic turf will fail. And they chose to say that they felt that it was a good choice for them, so that's fine. Yeah, I hope it works, I really do. I don't want to see anything fail. Even if we might have disagreed with that decision at the time, it's something we don't want to see.
So let me ask you a question. So you stressed, and we've talked about this too,
Yeah.
maintenance has to be part of the planning process and it can't be an afterthought.
Yeah.
What's the difference between natural versus synthetic if you're going to do a poor job maintaining either one? At that point, what's the difference? They'll both fail, they'll
Yeah.
both become subplayable surfaces sooner rather than later.
Yep.
So there's really no difference in that regard, right?
There's,
But if you have a good maintenance plan in place, no matter which surface you play, then you should be successful.
yeah, that's pretty much, I mean, again, obviously, if when we work with clients, we look at the, what they're trying to achieve from the field, what type of usage.
Right.
We use the usage calculator to work out, how much use they can put to those fields, or that field. And then we would build a maintenance program that would suit that. And that's a key point because, it's easy to say we will maintain it, but it's maintaining it to the right level and the right standard that's important. If I use that sort of, that calendar that I put up a bit earlier, where is it? There. If we use that as an example just for a minute, if we've gone to the trouble and depth and understanding of saying 8 cuts, a month, then that's what we would like to see happen. It's not because we're trying to be autocratical about it, it's because we know that we're building the program to make sure that there's success at the end of that. That's not a professional program by any stretch. I had far more intense programs than that when I was a groundsman. But that would be a program that would manage the needs of the town, the field in question, and look at the capabilities of the town and its ability to be able to maintain that field. So, but yeah, you're right. I mean, either way the fields fail, while it might be more expensive to recover a synthetic turf failure because it's a new carpet, pretty much. With grass you could just reseed it, which is infinitely cheaper. But again, if you get into that point of failure, then really whatever you're doing after that is firefighting and will potentially lead to more
Or
failure.
throwing good money after that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because if you fix it and don't maintain it yet again,
Absolutely.
you're just chasing.
Yeah, so I always like to work on prevention rather than cure.
Mm-hmm.
These types of programs will prevent problems in most cases. I mean, we can always get caught out by weather or, breakages of machines. That's fine, we accept that. But we work on the prevention because curing generally costs a lot more money and takes a lot longer.
So are you working with Somerville in any official capacity?
Well, we may well be. They've just gone out to bid actually for to have consultants in to work on an official basis with them. So
Okay.
we're going to tender a proposal to them for that.
So you guys have done about 7 or 8 projects other
Yeah.
than them, and you haven't concluded on any of those other projects that this synthetic would be the way to go?
In some cases, some of them aren't finished yet, so obviously they're still going through the process. In some cases, it may well be synthetic is the right choice. In some cases, we need to do more investigation at the moment, but we try and be objective and open-minded to the whole process. As I say, what we want personally doesn't come into that. What we want for the town, because it's what you want, that's what we try and work to, and we try and decide whether we think this would be the right system or that would be the right system. And I'm pretty sure that you can always spin a coin almost and say we should have gone with this if that doesn't work, and we should have gone with that if that doesn't work. But given our understanding, knowledge, experience, and approach to these things, we certainly take most, if not all, of the guessing work away. And that's not a bad word to say, guessing. Sometimes, we don't know what the climate's going to do. Look at the winter we've just had, the one when I arrived. I mean, I was digging myself out of my house for most of the winter, and this winter you were almost wearing sunglasses. It was an amazing, amazing sort of shift. So we don't know what the climate's going to bring. You know what's ironic though? That all the snow we had, certainly in the towns that we're working with, all the snow we had the previous year to hardly any snow this year compared, opening day still happened at around about the same time. which amazed me because, I mean, I know for a fact that we had 7 foot of snow in Rentham where I live. Over that period, that's certainly that January, February period, we had 7 foot of snow. So to have fields open more or less the same time as we did this year is like amazing to me.
Ian, of the natural fields that you've been involved in, how have they been maintained? Have they been maintained by the towns that put them in, or did they go out and hire, subcontractors, professionals that came in and did the maintenance?
Yeah, it's again, pardon the pun, it's like a hybrid. Most towns use obviously the DPW to do the majority of the, I'd say the bigger maintenance. So the spiking, the top dressing, the big things where you need tractors, trailers, those types of things. They've tended to come through the DPWs because they have the equipment and they've had the equipment, they've got their own fields that they're maintaining as well outside of the school systems. It's an interesting one about where a school system and a DPW fit together. And I was talking about it with Chuck a bit earlier, that it requires a lot of coordination, to make that work efficiently and effectively. But then there are some towns that, would use outside contractors for the majority of what they do. Because they just don't have the infrastructure to be able to maintain the fields with, their in-house staff or their in-house equipment. So some you can see over the years they've pulled back on having in-house staff looking after stuff, as obviously as the recession hit all of us. That was probably a game changer for a lot of people. So I think some have gone pretty much all outsourced. Some have a mixture. Some do it in-house as well. So I suppose it's any one of those three, to be fair. And I've seen varying success at each of those sort of options. For me, if you're going to go outsource, then you need an extremely good specification. I've seen things written, as I was telling the guys a bit earlier, you call it a truck, we call it a lorry in England. And I've seen things that, specifications that have been handed to an outside agency that you could drive a lorry through. They are that open and nondescript that even the contractor, I don't think, knows what they're supposed to do sometimes. So again, if you're going to go that route or think about going that route, then pull that specification in really tight. And make sure that you've covered as much as you possibly can. And they can be written fairly sensitively towards a contractor as well. It's not just all about you will do this on this day, this day, this day. Something like this helps for a start. I mean, the amount of contractors that don't actually get one of these to begin with is a big problem for them. And there's a lot of good contractors out there that want to do the right thing, and unfortunately they're not given good quality information to be able to deliver the contract. In the same instance, if you're going to look in-house, then the same thing would apply. Again, make sure that there's a good understanding of the maintenance. Things like looking at the staff, are they trained? Do they actually know what they're doing? And I don't mean that again disrespectfully, but it's amazing how many people have sort of morphed into this industry that, they've just gotten good at grass cutting and good at line marking and painting lines and things like that. But actually they've never been formally trained. They've never been to school, they've never been to college or university and trained in that sense. So it's amazing. We're doing a lot of training now. Do you know what we're doing a lot of training with as well? Coaches and athletics directors. So we're actually sitting down with them all and saying, look, here's how to use this field. You want the best use. You don't want to be walking off after every practice session saying that field stinks and all of those things. Here's how to use it. Help the ground staff, help the maintainers to use it correctly. We're doing a lot of that in prep schools at the minute because, again, they have high usage. They see that as a high priority to attract their students. So, we're helping them make sure that they can deliver the right kind of training for those to help them. But, whichever system that you decide to go with, I would say whatever it is, put a good specification together. If it's in-house, put a good specification together. Work with the DPW in this case. and just sit with them and say, look, we're not trying to screw you to the deck here, but, we're investing a huge amount of money into this as a town, and to help maintaining that, we need to look at this. And it may well be that these guys have the capability, but they just don't have the machinery or the tools or the equipment. So, again, all of these things can be addressed, and all of these things can be thought about.
Yeah, I'm all set.
Julie?
Sorry, where did it go? How do you tell if like a field wearing out is overuse versus maintenance?
That's really good, and what we do is we have a system called Performance Quality Standards. It's a system that I helped design back in the UK in the early 90s. What we do is we test the field. We look at the soil structure, we look at the grass types, we look at the ball bounce, ball roll, if it's soccer obviously, or any sports that use a ball roll. We look at traction, we look at hardness, we look at compaction, we look at moisture. We put all of those together. We have standards for all of those criteria, and they all fit into a standard, and they have tolerances to them. So if we go on, a professional soccer field, for instance, or a professional football field, then we would be looking for very, very tight tolerances to those things, because it's a professional field, and therefore they should be able to maintain it to a high standard. So we use this system, and we use that as like a baseline system. What that allows us to do is, because I could probably walk out on any field and say it's overused or it's under-maintained, but we don't want to just trust me all the time, and it's not fair to people that there might be good reason behind some things, not happening the way they are. I don't know that field, I don't maintain that field, I've seen it for the first time tonight. So what we do is we carry out this objective testing to make sure that we don't miss anything, to make sure that we're accurate in our assumptions or in our decisions, and then we can sit with you guys and look through that data with you and analyze, each of those areas. There are 37 criteria we use. We carried over 400 tests on one field. And we use the ASTM, the American Society for Testing of Materials. They have identified areas on all sports fields that should be tested. Sadly, it stops at what we call hardness, using a Clegg hammer or a G-Max, and planarity. We're basically looking at a level, usually 9 foot or 10 foot, radius. We've basically put all of our tests onto those 10 areas. So you get a comprehensive view of what's happening there. We also do 10 random areas, which is another requirement of the ASTM, so that we make sure that we've got the best possible picture we can give you of the quality of that field and where we think it might be suffering or failing and where we think we can help. And in a lot of cases, a field, I never judge a book by a cover. So while the cover might not look good, actually the field might be in great shape. It could have been completely hammered. And actually to be in some kind of shape is pretty good. So whatever's happening there, or whatever the field is made up of, is obviously a good thing. So we try and take all the good things and keep those good, and then the things that maybe are failing or are not so good, we try and say as recommendations, this is where we think you should focus, your maintenance programs, for instance. Or it could be, a renovation program, which is a little bit different. It's more of a sort of a concentrated approach to revitalizing an area of a field, or a full field in some cases. But that's a hugely useful tool. We actually we went to the British government with this. When I worked for the Institute of Groundsmanship back in the UK, we built these standards, and we went to the British government, and they have a funding department called Sport England, and all of the facility builds in the UK come through this department. They have a £70 million a year budget to offer for facility, either renovations or rebuilds or constructions. And they were having a huge amount of failures because they had no standards. They had no way of controlling what a consultant or a contractor or both were doing. So we told them about performance quality standards, which was actually designed to try and make a field safe initially. We had a lot of dangerous fields in the late 80s and early 90s. So we built this system to try and say, well, this field is safe. We wouldn't exactly give it a safety certificate, but we would say, look, it's going to be a lot safer than one that's not sort of tested. And the British government now use it for all of their construction, renovation, funding processes. There isn't a single thing that's funded by Sport England that doesn't go through the PQS system. So it's a universal system. I mean, nobody knows about it over here yet. We're introducing it to our clients, and they're amazed. In fact, I've just been on we've adapted it for golf as well. So I've just been on a golf course today, doing an assessment to work out the quality of a golf green, because that's another one that. How long's a piece of string? How good's a golf green? Well, it's how good the putter is, isn't it? How bad the putter is. So we adapted it for golf, which has been a big success, actually. I was quite surprised. I thought we'd get much more resistance from the golf industry, and having been in it, I know what it's like, but actually we didn't. But yeah, this system's pretty comprehensive. Gives a really good report. We give really good views. We want it to be educational. We don't want it just to be, here's your problem, here's the data, here's the tests that we carried out, here's a recommendation. We want that to be an educational thing that you can take and adapt into a maintenance program, adapt into a policy, adapt into, a training program. So we try and build the reports that way, that they become very much a sustainable use process for people.
It sounds like you need a bunch of data in order to tell if a field is overused versus under-maintained.
Yeah, in some cases you do. As I say, the reason that we use the testing process is because we take the subjectivity away.
Yeah, no, I know, and you're coming from outside versus, people, like the people experiencing the field. I'm just trying to get it. Okay.
Yeah, you just get a view for that.
Then what about like replacement for hybrid grass? Does that have like the same type of schedule as a synthetic carpet, or like what do you expect?
Yeah,
as far as that goes?
most hybrid systems, most of them I'd say, pretty much all of them actually. There's probably one or two out there that are untested at the minute. They just haven't been past a certain length. Most hybrid systems will last about 7 years. You don't have to do much to them, and you can basically maintain the field as it was a normal turf field, because the hybrid system is set below the height of cut of the field, so you can set it at a certain height. It's not there to play sport on. It's there as a
Binder.
as basically as a stability.
But if your grass maintenance is going to cost more than your synthetic maintenance, you're not really saving any other than just the durability of the grass, basically. Or
yeah, I mean, obviously, if I've actually got a study there that we rewrote in 2013, and where we look at it is that you look at the investment of a synthetic turf, you look at it over 8, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever you want to look at it over. Then we take the same analogy for natural grass. Now, we're not trying to compare them in that sense. We're saying that to look after this natural grass field, let's say using that program for the next 10, 15 years, it will cost you somewhere in the region of X. To look at the synthetic turf, it will cost you somewhere in the region of Y. We don't say then compare them both and see which is best, because what we're trying to establish for you is what is right for you. And if synthetic turf is right for you, then really the cost is, to some respects, immaterial in that sense. You're going to go with that if it's right for you, because you're going to get the benefit out of that, where you maybe wouldn't if it was natural grass. So if you're going to use it and you're not going to be able to maintain it regularly, then synthetic might be a better way to go. But at some point you're going to replace that carpet. Now it could quicker than 9 years or 8 years. It could be longer than that. Well, I think what's happening at the moment, from what I've seen, is that people are tending to have the carpets in place longer simply because they can't afford to relay them or recarpet them at the given time that was suggested. So most warranties are now hovering around about 8 years. So when you get a warranty with a synthetic turf surface, you have to maintain it in a certain way. You have to use it in a certain way. If you use it for anything that it wasn't initially designed for, the warranty will become void. Now, okay, you can fight that with the company. And in most cases, if you make a big enough noise, they'll find a solution for you. But their sort of, their fallback position will always be, you put a band across it. I've even seen tanks go across them in Africa. And obviously, that wasn't in the warranty, to have a chief run his tanks across there. I've seen some strange things with that. But it's amazing how people get caught out. You have to record every single bit of maintenance you carry out to a synthetic turf surface. That's not have to in the sense that it's law. That's have to in the sense that if you want to be able to fall back on the warranty at some point in its life, preferably before the 8 years, then you're going to need to be able to prove that. And, if you can't prove that, then it's like anything. It's he said, she said attitude, and you're going to be in a battle. And again, I'm not saying this to try and force the issue one way or the other. I just want to be honest. There's a lot of things that people will not tell you about synthetic turf or natural grass that I'd rather be honest and tell you everything I know about it from my perspective, so that you can make the right decision.
What about, it's fairly timely, drought conditions and the need for irrigation and all the water use and dead grass or grass that at least looks dead.
Yep.
It seems like synthetic might be a better choice from the water usage, or, what do you?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, natural grass does need to be kept alive with water. I mean, it can do without food a long time, but it can't do without water. And there's another reason that we water. It isn't just to keep the plant alive, it's actually to keep the soil in a good condition. Because if there's a contact sport being played on that soil, or that field, I've done well. That's the first time tonight. I'm taking up all your time here.
I can't wait to turn the BBC feed on for the Open tomorrow, though, I'll tell you
Oh,
right
yeah. You'll hear some good ones there, yeah, definitely. Anyway, just one quick thing. I like to just do a crazy Ivan every now and then. So instead of saying awesome, you all have to say Kushti.
Kushti?
Kushti.
Spell it.
Kushty. I've said it so many times in my life and I can't even remember how to spell it. You have to say Kushti. That's better than, well, it's not better than awesome, but
It's synonymous, though?
it's just a bit more of an English.
He's setting us up for something.
I'm not setting you up at all, I promise you. I would never do that. I would never do that. No, honestly, it's a slang Cockney saying for something that is awesome. So I promise you won't get punched in the face or, thrown out of a bar for saying it.
It's not like the Hawaiian good luck sign.
Nothing like that. No, but water. It's an essential element at the moment, not just to our life, but to everybody's life. Where is it going to go? How much water are we going to be able to use in the future? Nobody knows that. I can't answer that standing here. I can tell you that water is becoming scarce. That I've seen parts of Australia that were abundant with water that are now empty of water in a very short, 50 years, which might seem a long time to us, but that's a very short time. When I was in England, we conducted a study. We used a very famous university in England for the study, and they told us, because we looked at water, we looked at drought, water shortages, and everything else, and they told us that. This was 2006. They told us that by 2025, most of the south of England would be on a complete drought order all year, no matter how much rain was falling from the sky, because we just used and abused the resource, and we'd used it for things we should never have used water for. and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's a big problem. Yes, the industry has reacted to that from a natural turf perspective, and it is producing drought-tolerant grass species. We have, I don't know if you guys know what wetting agents are, but we have wetting agents which actually penetrate and use all of the moisture that falls either from an irrigation system or the sky, and uses it, forces it into the soil, and then holds it in the soil. So you get the maximum use out of that irrigation or natural climatic rainfall. Is it still a problem? Yes, absolutely. As I said, I'll be honest. If you're going to have a problem watering a natural turf field, then we really are going to have to think outside of the box. Obviously, we can put different materials in the soil that will retain more moisture as well. So it's not a dead duck by any stretch, and it's amazing when you ask an industry to be innovative, it can be, but it's definitely a challenge.
What about grey water?
Grey water's fine. Yeah,
You can use grey water.
grey water would be fine. Yeah, I think it would have to be filtrated so much though,
Sure.
because obviously there's a human element, falling around on the field. But in principle, yeah, any water that could be
Well,
recycled.
grey water, not black water.
Well, yeah, it could be used, yeah, and probably should be. We even, I know when I was a groundsman years ago now, we even worked with, included moisture retentive pellets into swell gel, I think we called it. Basically, as soon as moisture hit it, it swelled up, and then it just sat there waiting for the plant to be able to take the moisture out of it. So that, we've not looked very closely at that lately, but if we had to, then yeah, we could come up with something that would work. But it's a challenge. Synthetic surfaces, don't bother putting water on them to keep them cool. It doesn't work. I was on a surface the other day, it was 172 degrees. It was burning my feet through my shoes. That's how hot it was. Now, okay, that's the midday sun in a time of year where you would expect high, ambient air temperatures. Now, in saying that, in the same instance, the minute the cloud cover came across, it cooled down drastically. But again, if there's days when you've got glorious sunshine like we've had today, you can smell a synthetic surface a long way away before you ever see it when it's hot, because everything is heated up to such a degree. So trying to throw water on it, when you hit a surface that's 170 degrees, it just literally turns to steam. It just evaporates. In fact, it doesn't even hit the surface in most cases, especially if that water's really cold, and hasn't been sat in the irrigation pipes. But regardless, it doesn't work. It cools a synthetic field down for approximately 10 minutes. And there have been studies all over the country that have looked at that, by the way. That's not something I'm just plucking, from my understanding of it. So it's not something that you really want to be doing. But you do need an irrigation system for synthetic surfaces, because you will occasionally wash them and drench them with a biocide, which do work very effectively when they're applied through the irrigation system. So they are very helpful to have. If you're going through the expense of putting in a synthetic field, then for me, put the expense of the irrigation system with it. It would just be a no-brainer, really.
We got to try
Yep.
to keep moving here.
Yep.
I have one last question. So I know one major roadblock for natural grass is the time constraint, like to let the seed grow or to let the sod. Are there like technologies that have been developed to reduce that time, or is that still like what's on a field constructed properly? Like what would you expect for like fixing a patch or whatever? Like what's the downtime on that?
Depending on the size of that patch,
Say goalmouth.
let's say a goalmouth, if you're sodding it, turfing it as I would say in England, if it's prepared correctly, which it would have to be obviously, you can be on that in a couple of weeks maximum. In fact, if the sod is cut really thick, then you can be on it almost straight away, because it would live in its own, root zone, as we call it. So a lot of people are doing now, they're cutting sod. If you think back to the Copa America that was at Gillette, and they put Bermuda grass down on top of the synthetic field that's there in the stadium, and they cut it at, I think, 45, 50 millimeters thick, so 75 millimeters thick, 3 inches. So they literally transported the whole thing in, and it lived within itself, because it didn't need anything else in that sense. Now, that wouldn't last forever on synthetic turf, obviously, because that would heat up underneath and it would dry it out and so on. But if you had to get something, an emergency repair, you could, obviously just excavate the area a little bit deeper and then put a thicker sod in, and then you can, we get sort of biodegradable staples, as we call them, and you just hammer them in, and that holds it in place. And you won't be able to move that kind of weight anyway.
So short term, you can do it in a couple of days, a longer term solution, a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, again, the industry is trying to find quicker ways of germinating seed. Ryegrasses germinate very quickly within 2 or 3 days at this time of the year, without question. Bluegrass is probably 10, 15 days, just depends on the cultivar or the species. But you can also pre-germinate your seed. So you can take it through that germination process in a bucket, or it's actually done at manufacturers, at seed merchants now, and it comes in the bag, and it's just sealed in a different way. It's just sealed so no air can get to it, and you literally rip it open, throw it out, and then it's already germinated. Yeah. So again, there's options. Some of them are expensive though. Sod is expensive, especially if you're buying it that thick. So yeah.
Yep, I'm good, thank you. Is Sheila good?
I'm all set.
All right, so, in the
Sorry
interest of
about
time, I want to try to just kind of boil it down to one question. Given that we're looking to, when we wrote our request for bids, we said that we wanted to play football, high school and youth football, on the field. We wanted to play high school and middle school field hockey. Boys and girls soccer, we have 4 teams in the high school between boys and girls, between JV and varsity. We have a boys and girls middle school team. We have youth soccer, girls lacrosse, high school and youth, and boys lacrosse, high school and youth. Based upon that kind of use and the potential opportunity to get revenue from the facility once renovated, do you see a path forward with natural?
Oh, that's a difficult question. That's a naughty question to ask.
Kind of teed it up earlier for you, though.
Really naughty. I'll smack your hand for that.
I thought it was a cushy question.
Yeah, nice. We don't like him, do we? I'm not trying to evade that question, but it's a really difficult question to ask stood here without understanding the infrastructure of the town, what it's capable of, what it's not capable of.
Let me ask it a different way.
From the...
If that's what we wanted to do,
Yep.
we have 2 people maintaining 60-plus acres of fields and parks.
Yep.
Do you see us being able to move forward with the current maintenance staff?
I'll give you a slightly alternate view on that.
Okay.
Because the staff number isn't the big issue there, in the sense that it's 2 people. They will have to work equally as hard on a synthetic turf field that's used that often and that much as you're suggesting there. They will have to be brushing that very regularly. They'll have to be doing as much input
Or somebody.
or somebody will, yeah, as it would if it was a natural turf field used that way. There isn't a shortcut there.
Okay.
I think is what I'm trying to say without sort of, offending anybody. There isn't a shortcut, and it's not an easy answer, and it's not an easy question, and I understand that. These are the questions that are going around in people's minds. But it really is, it's absolutely essential that if you go synthetic, and that's the decision that the town wants to make, that you have to maintain it.
fully understand that.
Yeah.
My concern is with the natural surface. We went over there, we saw the goal mouse from girls lacrosse.
Yep.
We put boys lacrosse on there and girls lacrosse on there. And I have a tough time believing that even if you were here to maintain the field, or your son,
I wouldn't be able to do that. No,
your
yes.
son.
Yeah, my son's a
I
better
think
green.
I don't know, in order for us to maximize the use and do what we've asked these folks to design for us, I'm kind of excited to take a look at what they've come up
what
with,
they're
because
offering,
we've asked them to come up with
Yep.
both synthetic and natural options. So I'll take that as your answer.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, a lot of, and of course, the easy way is to hire us to do a feasibility study, and then we'll tell you probably. No, sorry, that was a bit of a joke.
Nice
but,
pun.
yeah, but no, it's a difficult question to answer without having all of the information. And as I say, you know, it could be the way to go, but natural turf could also be the way to go. I think it would be good to analyse it, whoever does that. In a serious note now, it would be good to analyse both of those approaches and look at all of the, you know, the
This kind of stuff.
yeah, all of the advantages and disadvantages of those things.
The data.
And crunch the data, yeah.
Okay.
And then,
Fair enough.
then you'll come out with, I think, with the right decision. And if the right decision is synthetic, then that's the right decision.
Yeah.
You know, and as I say, it's, you don't know that at the minute, though. And I will say that. I don't think you're there yet to understand that. I think you, all in your hearts, you've made your own decisions, and I appreciate that, because I've stood at a lot of these lecterns in the past 2 years and had these types of, you know, conversations and meetings and questions. But I think, you know, in your heart, you've made your decision. I think what you've got to do now is let the head make a decision and get the right information in front of you, so that you know that you've then done, you know, you've gone around the 360 view.
That's why you're here.
Yeah. And I think that will send you a long way to the right decision once you've done that.
Relative to the feasibility study, we will discuss it to some extent as the sitting member of the Board of Selectmen on this committee. I will bring that back to the Board of Selectmen as well.
Fine, yeah, no problem.
That's what purse strings lie.
Yep.
All right, I'd like to open it up for some questions, but in the interest of time, if you have questions, then, you know, I'll ask you to be brief, and I'll ask the question asker to be brief. Bob, go ahead.
From Bob Romney from the PMBC.
Hi.
It sounds like what you're talking about, length of turf, that what Chuck wants to do is not going to be able to be done, because you're going to have field hockey that's going to play on a real shortcut, and then you have football or some of your other sports on a higher cut, and you can't get synthetic
Ideal.
grass to grow.
Ideal,
Yeah, I think.
because it's being done all over the state.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's a bit like I said earlier, you know, manage the expectation. The expectation is that if you want to play multiple sports on it, one or another of those sports will probably have to make a deal and meet it halfway, that it won't be the perfect surface that you would have had for football or soccer or, you know, field hockey. But that's why we call them multi-use.
Quick follow-up on that
Yep.
is, how much time is going to take to maintain after a field hockey game or after a football game?
From a synthetic perspective?
On a synthetic, yeah.
We work the maintenance on the hours of use and the type of use. So if it's one game, then you could probably just move straight on to the next game. Now, that would be subject to me, and this is probably belt and braces and something that you wouldn't always get the opportunity to do. I would say that just somebody should just inspect the surface, just make sure that, first of all, the sport that's following, there isn't areas where the infill has been kicked out, especially with the hockey sticks when they're catching, you know, the ground. That's what I would suggest is that's checked. And there's two reasons for that very quickly. One is for the safety of the players, but two, for the safety of the carpet. Because once you expose or remove the infill, you're exposing the fibres, and they don't have any support. That infill is like a support system to it. So if you then expose that, and then somebody comes along and kicks it or you know, hits it again with a hockey stick, for instance, then it's going to damage it. And what will happen is the fibre will generally split. at the end. That's generally what happens, or it'll snap from the carpet. Now, you might say there are 40 million fibres in that carpet, but you'd be surprised how many you lose how quickly. So again, it would just be a case of just monitoring that. But within reason, you could just literally let the hockey guys, girls come off, and then the next sport comes on.
Good. Anybody else? Mr. Clyde?
I got 100, so.
Right, there's a pub down the road. Chuck told me that.
I think they go over.
When you do the feasibility study, will it be, or if they move forward with that,
Yeah.
would it be just for Alumni Field?
It depends on how the town wants to look at it. The scope can be bigger than just Alumni Field, and we can do as big a feasibility study as the town needs. I would say that the focal point would be better being on Alumni, because that's the area that is of greatest concern at this moment of time, or at least from what I'm hearing. But it could be extended, or we could just do a separate feasibility study for other areas. It depends. It can be done in any way that the town see fit, that we think would work.
And I can see from your presentation, there's a lot of work that goes into it.
Yes.
So what would be a budget number for something like that, to not give away your,
That's a secret.
well, the
tell you
town,
that.
as you know, would have to go out to bid, and
I've already been very transparent with Chuck, and I've said the feasibility study at this minute will be between 10 and 15,000. And I just said that because he asked me pretty much, and Mike did straight up, so I gave them a figure that I thought that would cover, everything that we need to do. Having done other feasibility studies and known the type of work that's involved, and that it's time that's involved in most cases with feasibility studies. It's time to collect data, to analyse data, to interview people. We like to interview people, both people of the town, residents, as well as officials, so that we can get a little bit more of an understanding, and we ask a little bit different questions from that part of the process. But, just so that we understand the will and want of everybody, or a cross-section.
how many other companies like yours are out there?
Not many that I'm aware of, if I'm being truthful, but I don't really, if I'm being honest, it's not arrogant, I just don't go looking for I just try and concentrate on doing what we do well. It's not that I don't worry about competition, it's just that I'm focused on trying to help our clients and obviously generate new clients. So from my perspective, if there are others out there, I'm quite happy that, we quote against those companies. I'm very transparent about that. We want the right thing for the town. If you think that's not us, then that's absolutely fine with us. I've said to Chuck, I said, I'd still pick the phone up and talk to you guys if you had a question for me. We're not, we don't. We're a business, and we need to make money from that business. But there's a heart and soul to this business as well. It isn't just about the profit.
Time, is it 10 days, 20 days?
About 2 to 3 weeks. It just depends how quick we can generate or have the data given to us. If everything's on a computer that somebody can email me, then we're rocking. We're flying through that. But invariably it takes time, because it's on different people's computers, and trying to get everybody together tends to become the interviewing is just whenever we can fit that in. It's not. We don't have to do it at a certain part of the process to be able to carry on. We have that plate spinning, then we'll go and actually carry out the performance quality standards on the field, because we want to know that. Because if we are thinking that it should stay natural turf, then we need to understand what the baseline is for that. So that would be part of the assessment that we carry out anyway. That's a really good point to base our recommendations on.
Jim? Jack?
Just speaking of time, and you may have mentioned this.
Who are you?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Jackie Sako from 74 Initial Road.
Hi, Jackie.
From a timing standpoint, you may have covered this already. If they were to do organic turf, is the initial field that's installed sod, or are you seeding and we're waiting for this to grow?
It all depends on which time of year that is, on to whether or not seed would be the right choice or sod would be the right choice.
And is there a greater success factor doing it one way versus the other, and then timing it as such?
If I had to go on one side of that, I would say sod, because it's instant, but it requires a lot of watering, a lot of maintenance to keep it alive while it, establishes. Seed is better because the seed acclimatizes, so it gets used to the conditions, it gets used to the ground conditions, get used to the climatic conditions, so it tends to harden quicker. And while it's from one day to next, you think there's nothing happened, and then suddenly you wake up, another day, and it's all green. So a lot of it will depend on when and if, as we say, ground is broken.
And is there a time frame? So we see, baby grass sprout and it starts to fill in, as we've all seen that happen. Is there a time lapse that we should not be playing on this? Is it months? Is it weeks? Is it a year? Could we potentially lose a season doing it this way?
Yeah, I think that's whichever way you go with this. I think you're probably looking at potentially a season away from using that field.
So you need a growing season.
Yeah, growing season. Sorry. Yeah. So
So we'd feasibly have to shut down the field for a full school year in order to have this installed and have it root effectively?
So,
yeah.
and Chris, I don't know if you can hear the questions. You good? Okay, just ask you guys to speak up. If let's say we went to town meeting in November and everything got approved, and we decided in the spring, this is when we're going forward, we broke ground in the spring, and we're going with natural.
Yep.
So we'd go with seed or sod, and we wouldn't play on that again until spring of 18 or fall of 17?
You may well get some fall of 17, but more likely the spring of 18. It just depends. It's one of those that I've done this so many times, but you never can actually say that that's perfect and it's going to work. But if it's sod, and if you break ground, I mean, you're talking about a 12 to 16 week process to construct.
Okay.
That takes time, and that's without any weather, interruptions. It takes that long to construct these things. They've got to be constructed right. They've got to be constructed from the ground up. So the infrastructure, all of the piping for drainage and irrigation has to be installed as we bring the subsoil and root zones in.
You mentioned, though, that the sod is very expensive to get that thick cut will be most successful. Is it a more expensive proposition to install an initial sod field versus seeding it?
Yes, it is, yeah. Yeah. Again, it's quicker to be potentially be used,
Right.
but you're paying for that speed, if you like, where seed will take longer. Ultimately, seed will end up, a more pure field if it's grown correctly. But sod, obviously, you can get really good sod. Rhode Island, places like that, they grow really good sod down there. So places like that would be the place to look.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Littleton, if you don't know, and I don't know which, I'm sorry, Kevin Davis, Whitetail Way. Littleton is a good farming field. It's got a great agricultural community. And we cherish our open spaces and things like that.
Yeah.
If Littleton did something unique, like having a sod farm and having something like that come in, could we grow that resource here naturally to help with if we went with a natural surface, could we have that as part of the town infrastructure to have as a space and then pull that in? And what do you think about that idea?
Yeah, could be done. I used to do it on a golf course. I used to take an area of a golf course and say that's my sod farm. We used it for greens or tees or repairs or whatever we were doing it for. Yeah, it can be done. It's quite a challenge, but obviously you need 80,000 square feet of area to start with, but yeah, you're right. I mean, from the point of view of could it be done? Yes, absolutely it could.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
You need a groundsman.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right, any other from from the committee? Ian, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I'm really sorry that took so long.
It was much our fault.
Anybody else?
We're a curious group.
Thank you.
Have a cushy ride home?
I'll have an awesome ride.
There's a pump in the common.
You said that like an American, didn't you?
Who's going to win the Open?
Good question. God, you asked some really tough questions.
I'll ask you again on Sunday.
I think, do you know Life Fancy? Nicholson.
Ah.
He's been
A lefty.
rubbish all year, and I just think he's just going to hit it
How did
right.
he do in the Scottish last week?
He'd love somewhere like Troon, because he can spread all over the place in Troon.
How did he do in the Scottish Open last week?
How come he didn't, did you say?
No, how did he do?
Oh, rubbish.
Yeah?
Yeah, but I just
Sorry.
think he can turn up.
He's just looking to place a bet.
Rory as well.
Yeah.
He's due.
The weather's going to be horrendous. It's awesome.
Ian, thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Next time,
everybody.
we'll
Really nice to meet you.
definitely be in touch. I gave Jim Clyde, he's the head of the highway.
Okay,
He manages the guys that are responsible for our fields.
right, okay.
So I gave him a copy of your brochure and your business card as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Mr. Bergeron from Youth Lacrosse,
Yeah.
Director of Fields.
Director of Fields, yeah.
All right, John, you have 7 minutes.
I apologize profusely.
Well, you're missing out. You got to stick around. I'm going to talk about the pitch and my Kushti presentation.
This is President Youth Lacrosse.
No, he's the field.
Field director. So I'm
field
John
director.
Bergeron.
He used to be the president.
Previous president of Littleton Youth Lacrosse last year, and I've been a coach for, 6 or 7 years, I guess. And so currently I've been appointed by J.R. Tito is the president of Littleton Youth Lacrosse, and I've been appointed director of fields, I guess. So specifically looking at fields and going to stick with this until we make some significant progress. So first of all, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you and just kind of give you kind of a customer's perspective of Littleton Youth Lacrosse and kind of what we're seeing and how, girls Youth Lacrosse uses Alumni. Certainly if other grades would move over to the high school field, depending whatever type of field surface we put down on Alumni, they'd be users and stuff. So I just wanted to give a little feedback on what not only the Littleton Youth Lacrosse is feeling, but as well we do a survey every year, and I wanted to give some feedback from the parents and stuff like that who have kind of struggled with where we're at. So with that, wait for this to fill. Okay, great. So just to let you know a little bit about Littleton, a little bit about lacrosse kind of in general. It's the most growingest sport in the country by far. It is, I took a couple of quotes here from US Lacrosse just directly from their website talking about between, how between 2000 and 2014 women's lacrosse has grown 109%. Between 2009 and 2014, within high school, 551 schools added boys programs. And they're seeing growth rates around 27 to 30%. So that is double the growth rates of the next closest sport. So from a growth rate perspective, and we're seeing that at Littleton Youth Lacrosse itself, is that we've got 200 members in 2016, 66 high school players, of course, of both boys and girls. And so we're seeing that continued growth and are certainly feeling the pinch of the fields, of which we're hoping, an alumni field renovation can help alleviate this. So we're really competitive. I know that's not the primary goal, but the high school went 17-3 last year in 2016, and we put a lot of. There's a JV practice, there's a varsity practice. There's 2 to 3 youth lacrosse teams playing on that field, so 5 individual practices, team practices on that field on any given day, and so certainly it's feeling the pressure. And lacrosse, as far as a sports perspective, is the most densely populated per field. So if you look at the other spring sports, and I only did the analysis for spring sports, roughly there are 88 participants per field in Littleton, and you compare that to baseball, which is 40, and soccer, which is 42, because they simply do the math. It's just, all I did was take the number of participants, I divided by the number of fields that were allocated, and you just do the math. And so we're certainly feeling the pinch and have the most number of players per field, and I think it's showing. Here's just an indication of U.S. lacrosse growth across the country. You can see that up in the Northeast and stuff like that, certainly we're feeling a lot more on the East Coast, but the West Coast is catching up very quickly as well. So I just thought that was that was interesting. So we do a survey. This is the second annual survey where we just ask the parents simple questions about hey, how did we do overall? What was your experience? Did your kids get equal playing time, et cetera, et cetera. And we have a field at the end of the survey that simply asks the question, is there anything else you would like to comment? It doesn't suggest positive, it doesn't suggest negative, right? The single largest feedback item for the second year in a row was around field conditions. And I'll show you a couple of quotes, and I wanted to provide them so that people could see what people were feeling. But it's not a coincidence, and it's more than 2.5 times the next most frequent comment. So as far as indicating from a passion perspective, certainly it ranks up there. The other thing I'd like to offer is we simply have a safety issue on our hands. I mean, at the end of the day, a number of the quotes, and you'll read them, where people are concerned about the safety of the fields themselves. Some kids often, and sometimes at the encouragement of the parents, will simply refuse to play goalie. Because they're worried that the kids are going to scoop up a ball, and then when they throw it at them, the kids are catching rocks in their face. And we've literally had to stop games to prevent, to get the dust and the dirt and the stones out of kids' eyes. Some of the other things that have occurred is that we've had to forfeit games. There are some towns who I've gotten emails who have commented that we don't want to come play. There are towns that commented that Littleton should not be allowed to host any more games because of the condition of their fields. So, I mean, we're starting to get the kind of blowback from the other towns that are showing up. And I have, emails, and I'd be happy to forward those on to whoever have. But it's, and we forfeited all of our playoff games this year. At U9 and U11 levels, because
Forfeited home field.
We forfeited home field, not the game, but we ended up having to go somewhere else just because of the fact that people wouldn't
Boys and
come
girls?
and play. Good question. I think just
Girls
boys.
plays a jamboree.
Oh, that's right. Thank you.
Girls
Mike.
plays jamboree.
Girls play in a jamboree,
Okay.
and that's typically one town designates an area, and they all the teams go there. So the U9, and 11 coaches have protested against playing, or I covered that. We're working with Park and Rec. I'd say there was a good significant progress specifically last evening. To be totally candid, to date, it's been a little bit slow. We've gotten some feedback that, hey, look, we're not going to be able to get to the field analysis and usage rates until kind of the September timeframe, which you guys know would be too late, right? If you start to look at things and do analysis in September, your opportunity to be able to plant grass is kind of through October. And so with that being the case, if you don't get anything done or make decisions on moving fields or replanting or what you're going to resod, the ship has sailed for the spring. It's already too late, right? You just simply don't have enough time to be able to recover. But I am encouraged by the meeting just last night where it looks like the Park and Rec Department is going to sponsor like a sports council to go look at that. So I'm encouraged by that. And then I'd also like to offer that, we spend, and one of the things that we didn't have a chance to talk about, but, certainly we spend thousands of dollars annually, and that money is leaving the town of Littleton, specifically to rent field space, because lacrosse kind of starts the last week in February. Whether it's tryouts, whether it's coaching, because the very first weekend of lacrosse is the first weekend of April. So if you just want to even get a couple of coaches, or a couple of practice sessions in as a coach, even if you just want to get 4 before your first game, you're renting field space. And that's happened certainly 2 years ago, it was horrible. But even this past year. And so $1,000 is the check that Littleton Youth Lacrosse has written. That doesn't include the additional funding that was donated by parents of the teams. I know 2 years ago, I sponsored 6 indoor, and all I did is I passed the hat. I had 6 indoor practices. I asked parents to donate $10, because when you know, it's kind of $2.50 an hour, we had 20-something kids, and you just do the math, but, you know, so that alone, for my team alone, was $1,500 in addition to the $1,000. So there's thousands of dollars that I would suggest if we, you know, took up the collection and said, you know, would you be willing to, you know, spend an extra couple of bucks to be able to do something for the fields? I think that certainly within lacrosse, and I would offer that, you know, certainly within, it's worth asking the question of a lot of other sports, would they be willing to donate? We do ask a question on the survey, would you be willing to buy more time at an indoor facility? And overwhelmingly, it was over 94% of the respondents said yes for the spring and that kind of a thing. So just to give you an indication of a level of interest. So I thought I'd be remiss if I didn't supply a couple of quotes. The image you see up there is the Littleton High School field. That's Ethan Dolan, for those of you who know him. And, that's a shower of you know, stone, sand, and dirt right in front of the crease, which I think people were talking about. It's certainly the heaviest usage area. And even if you watch college sports, you know, college lacrosse, where I would suggest the University of North Carolina has more money than the town of Littleton, they have grass fields, and they still suffer, even though they have practice fields with high weather or high maintenance areas in front of their goal. And they're actually, I think, making the decision to be able to switch. But I'll just read a couple of the quotes. You know, the U9, U11 lax field isn't moved. You might as well not have lax for those kids. It's an embarrassment, unsafe, and acceptable. The fields are a complete disgrace to our town and our children, and I'm sure you hear it from everyone, right? The fields stink. There's a comment there on the bottom about the beginning of the season and how we constantly have to rent. You know, we get off to a slow start, and if we could get some indoor practice space, and I'm thinking that even outdoor when it's cold, I mean, even when we do rent spaces from Littleton, we rent the outdoor space at Acton Indoor, so it's not a matter of the kids are willing to go out there and the coaches are willing to go out there and be cold or be in the rain or whatever. It's just physically, you know, it's kind of hard to play lacrosse in snow. And then, you know, 3 direct quotes of the fields are embarrassing. So I just wanted to take a moment. We've got a couple of data points here where we're starting to develop a pattern. You know, you're getting consistent feedback year over year. And just share some of the feedback on behalf of Littleton Youth Lacrosse. So, you know, with that, I hope you guys are able to address not only, you know, when you're taking into account whatever type of turf you decide to put in or recommend, that you consider also making sure that you address the spring, early spring, because that's an issue which, you know, often I think this year we weren't able to get on the fields until the 3rd week in March or 4th week in March, which was the week before the season started. So all of that stuff was done off season. So with that, I'll take any comments or questions or feedback. And
John, what does youth lacrosse pay for field maintenance?
That's close to $7,000. So we pay $7,000 annually. Which is a little tough pill to swallow, just to be candid, not because of the price tag, it's because we pay by participant, but we have half the number of fields. So I would argue that Littleton Youth Lacrosse is actually funding field maintenance on the other fields. So you know, you saw the numbers, and I took the liberty of putting together a spreadsheet. You probably can't read it from there, but all I did was take the number of participants, I divided the number by the number of fields. All I did was go to the websites of the individual sports, and I just captured where they're practicing. I just looked at their schedules and stuff. So yeah, so $7,000. I think it's about $7,000. I think it's just under. Please.
With the field use, is it only the girls that use Alumni, or do any of the younger?
It's only the girls that use Alumni.
Okay, and that's for all levels, 3rd grade through high school?
Through high school, correct.
Practices as well as games.
Practices
Correct.
and games.
Correct. So our typical format for youth is 2 practices during the week, and then games on Sundays. So typically Saturdays go totally unused. I'm not sure 1 day a week is enough rest for the fields, but It's pretty intense, because, I mean, in any given day, immediately after school at the high school, you have the junior varsity, then you have varsity, then you have, U15, A or B, or U13, because there are 2 levels of youth lacrosse that use the full-size field, and the only one we have is the one at the high school.
Do you ever split that field in half for like the 3rd and 4th graders to play, or the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th?
They play at the middle school, because they have a smaller field. So sometimes we end up having to double up, and it actually, I would suggest, is actually detrimental, because then you have twice as many kids on half of the field, right? So it's kind of 6 1/2 dozen. I don't think it makes much of a difference. Please.
Kelly Mullen, Washington Drive, Littleton. Do only the girls use Alumni Field because everybody practices at the same time, so you can only accommodate one set of teams, or is it because you're told that only, like, because of the conditions of the field and what's going on, only the girls can practice there?
That's a great point. I think it's as simple as we're told that we can practice there because of the usage. So, quite frankly, a 200-pound boy running around in front of the goal mouth is tearing up the sod, as opposed to, the flip side of that. I think soccer goes down to like U5 or something like that. I don't know. I'm suggesting. It's not a statement. I'm a 40-pound kid versus a 200-pound kid running around the field. I would also suggest that the wear factor, or the usage factor in lacrosse is just simply higher, just because the numbers swell in t-ball and in pee-wee soccer. We're not quite, when you look at the numbers, you're not quite comparing apples to apples, right? I mean, you could try and find a way to normalize it. I didn't get that detailed in my analysis, because I figured, frankly, it would be too hard to explain, but I'm willing to take a look.
I forget what it was. Good. So when we re-sawed the middle of Alumni, we eliminated boys lacrosse on Alumni for that purpose, because we didn't want to have to go through that basically year after year. And we felt that girls only on that field would eliminate most of the problems we have there, which they have. They wreck the crease area and things like that, but that's just usually from the goalies, and they wreck right in the 50 when they do the draw circles. But it's a different game. The boys,
They're just not as hard on the field.
yeah.
So ultimately, with a new field, proper maintenance, all that stuff, you would like the boys to be able to play there.
At
Is
Alumni
that
Field?
an accurate statement?
Yeah, I think yeah, pretty much. I mean, at the end of the day, I'd like to play in a surface. I don't care where, to be totally honest with you. I would just like them to be able to be playing on a surface that, frankly, has grass.
And that's safe.
Safe.
I mean, I coach
I kind of
lacrosse
agree.
as well.
You're absolutely right.
And of all the sports that require a safe field, it's lacrosse, because these kids are scooping up a ball with a stick with a net, and then they're throwing that ball. And, you pick up a rock, that rock goes into a kid's cage and takes out an eye. And then it's a bigger issue than just
for reference. Just for reference, my son, when he was 11 years old, could throw 60 miles an hour with the lacrosse. I mean, you got a big cantilevered arm, so just mechanically, it's a lot easier to get going a lot faster. So these kids who are throwing, I mean, they're high schoolers who are shooting over 100 miles an hour right now. So just for
Alumni Field was always deliberately underutilized and underscheduled. And the only thing that was ever put out there besides high school football was little kids soccer for a while. And even then, they were told, we'd actually prefer you not, this is the school department telling them that, the athletic director, we'd prefer you not to be out there. Once lacrosse came onto in the mix, we just didn't have enough field space. We tried boys lacrosse down there one year, huge mistake, total failure, tried to recover from that, felt like we don't want the girls to be out there, not that we don't want them out there, we don't want anybody out there, but we have no choice, there's not enough capacity. So we begrudgingly said, let's see if that'll work, and it's tolerable. So we've made that work, but the boys just, we can't do it. We tried it once, it's like we don't know what what the decision is. We tried it and it failed. But that's always been, that field was designed to be underutilized because it's supposed to be gem, and when we use it too much, it no longer is.
Kev?
Kevin Davis, Whitetail Way. Would you advocate also, John, that just having the lacrosse have access to more fields in the town as well?
Oh, sure.
Okay. And if the, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so the analysis isn't complete, but what I've done is I've reached out to baseball and I've reached out to soccer and asked them by field, how many team practices do they have per field per day, right? So you see Littleton High School field is up there at 5 practices per day, right? And, you know, soccer has like 12 fields. So it's not a criticism, it's just a fact, right? So it just is what it is. And so I just want to look at the field usage. So I'm working with Alicia Day to try and help her just simply compile the data, and let's get a baseline and figure out kind of where we're at. So.
I appreciate the comment you made, the point you made about the beginning of the season, because when you think about youth sports specifically, and we do it wrong in the United States, the ratio of games to practices is upside down. We should have 2 practices minimally for every game we have, and it should really be more like 3 or 4. And with an outdoor sport like this at that time of year, it's not going to happen with the natural grass and the way the fields we have and the conditions we have. And if we can change that ratio, it'll benefit the kids tremendously in their development. So that's a good point.
Thank you. All right, very good. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just want to
I
say.
have to wait to be discussed.
You still might have another.
I'm
Christie?
I'm trying.
You said crikey?
I said
He
crikey.
said crikey. And he does not think that was awesome.
I just want to thank you for putting this together. You kind of put it together on a tight schedule here in order to be here tonight. I know you got to move some stuff around. I appreciate you being here. You mentioned that there are some kids that often will not play goalie.
Yep.
Brady moved up to the U13s this year, but when he was playing U11 the last couple of years, he loves playing goalie, but he would not play in any home games. He just wouldn't do it. He got too many rocks and dirt and everything. I've said it before, but I'm going to keep saying it because we need to address these issues because you mentioned it, Tom, safety. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we've got approval of the minutes from last meeting.
That next. We actually have
Chuck, I
2
apologize. I
sets.
gotta go.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
Oh, here's July
Thanks, John.
6th.
Yep, no problem.
But we didn't approve,
So the minutes from 6:15?
6:15.
7:06.
7, yeah.
Let's hold off on the 7-6 minutes, but just so everybody has a chance to read them, we can approve at the next
Sure.
meeting. Is that all right? Sure. Okay with that? Sure.
So how about the 7,
So 6:15,
6:15?
I think that's the ones we have before us.
It's his spelling out.
July 6th.
Everybody okay with what was on there? We just had some additions, right, Julie?
I just had addition.
Yeah, a couple.
Oh, amended, look at this. Wow.
And this, you weren't here last week. This is from last week, so that was July 6th.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sheila. Get reimbursed for paper.
July 6th, too. Well, that's why I did
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
See ya.
Hey, John.
Go easy on Ian in the parking lot, would you?
What?
Go easy on Ian in the parking lot.
I will.
He might be at the pub by now.
Do you need them? It's what Alicia handed out.
She's coming home.
See it again, any attention?
That's an extra for
Thank you.
first.
Thanks for including that. Everybody okay with the minutes from 6:15?
Take a motion. Motion to approve the minutes from June 15th.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you all. All right. Uh-oh. Just lost Ian's. You know, flexible he is, huh?
Go me and grab it.
That's about it. Everybody's been kind of giving their input as we go along, but we are at the section where we have public input. Does anybody wish to be heard?
There was a question on Facebook that I promised that I would bring here since she could not be here from Jan. Help me.
Callahan?
Jan O'Callahan. I just put on my goggles. to know
How do I
if
put that?
you're
Facebook question?
Yeah.
Sagal.
Jackie Sagal per Facebook?
Right, via Facebook.
Jan O'Callahan's proxy, Jackie Sagal.
She's wondering whether tonight or another night we could discuss how and if a market analysis of rental needs can be conducted so a reasonable assessment of potential rental income can be made.
Doesn't sound like her at all. Do it again with a different voice.
Jan, if I knew your voice, I would do it for you. It says,
A market analysis.
how and if a market analysis of rental needs can be conducted so a reasonable assessment of potential rental income can be made.
Oh, so the demand
So
for
in other
rentals,
words-
it sounds like?
Yeah.
She wants to know the demand for rentals.
How much money can we make and who can we
And-
sell it to?
But no, really, I think what she's asking is how do we make that assessment in advance of that?
I think we can, go ahead, Michael.
I was just gonna, Mike, you might know, didn't we do this last time around?
We did.
I thought I remembered them talking
I'd have
about
to pull
Acton
up.
specifically.
I'd have to pull up
How did you do it?
old data.
Quickly.
I called them.
So you called different people who rent fields around
Yeah,
here?
and they gave me all their numbers.
Okay. So we
Okay,
could
so-
probably.
But I had it laid out.
I mean, I think it's a great question, and I think, but I think before we can do
That's
that, yeah, but I also think we need to, we've talked about, and we heard some talk tonight about scheduling the usage, doing it and showing what our projected usage is, and then that'll show how much opportunity there is. Because if you said, hey, all we're gonna do is rent it, we're not gonna use it for any, well, you probably have a bigger market than if you said, hey, can only use it from 8:30 to 11 on certain weeknights, you know, so we gotta get those assumptions in place before you're gonna be able to really ask the right question. And then I would think, yeah, you could reach out to communities that are doing it, but I think you could also reach out to renters. Who are the renters, you know, and find out from them, you know, is there capacity out there, you know, is there more demand than you guys, that you have, and are we attractive because we're closer to the highway and we have the point coming online, and gee, that's one, you know what I mean? We might be attractive, maybe we'll market ourselves to be more attractive than the backwoods of Acton.
Those people may not be identified right now because if we build it, they will come, you know, there could be adult flag football leagues that will pop up and want to rent it from 8:30 to 10 o'clock on Tuesday and Thursday nights, you know, so they may not be identified.
So I think we should
So
keep
we
that
have
on
to-
the list of things to be thinking about and
absolutely.
executing on.
Yeah.
I just don't know that we're ready to do it right now. But when we get more ready, I think we can brainstorm on what's the best way to do it. And she's right.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be throwing pie in the sky projections out there. They should be, have some semblance of analysis based on where we are, who we are, and what's out there.
Yeah, I think at this point, we're looking at what our wants and needs are.
Right.
Relative to alumni, and then if we determine that we are able to rent it and subsidize it or whatever, we have to wait to see.
Yeah, and
So-
I mean, it sounds like our usage is gonna be, you know, we wanna use it for a lot, and there's
Yeah.
a balance there with wear and tear as
Sure.
well.
Right.
And we can charge more
We want to
fees.
shut it down, yeah.
Or charge more fees for that, and just, yeah, there are a lot of
Right.
questions, so I
What's the
agree.
point where it actually makes
Yeah.
sense to do it versus not
Right.
make sense to do it? Yeah, that might be a point.
So Sheila, can we just kind of put that on the potential future agenda item list?
Going back here.
All right. Thank you for bringing that forward, Jack.
Thanks, Jan.
All right. Schedule next meeting. Everybody good for next week?
You said Thursday, the 21st.
Yes. We've got this room on the 21st.
And I've.
Thursday or Wednesday?
Thursday next week.
Thursday.
Carl, we did that in order for you to be able to make it, because we've got some RFQ stuff that's going on,
Yep.
and wanted to make sure that our PMBC member can make it. Can you make it on Thursday?
Yeah.
21st?
And I've secured,
What? No.
Um,
Did I mess you up?
Be challenged.
Relative to next Thursday, or, okay.
Well, I'm challenged anyway.
Oh, I think that's an anniversary or something based on,
No, I'm agreeing that he's challenged.
that's awesome.
and I confirmed LABA and youth soccer will be here for on the
Awesome.
21st.
Okay, so, soccer.
Oh, yeah.
So, Tom, you're challenged?
I may be a little late.
Okay, so, football and cheer are tentatively scheduled for the 27th.
Yep.
And hopefully at that point in time, we'll have made a decision and we'll have our OPM and our designer narrowed down at that point. We can have them at that meeting as well.
Perfect.
All right?
Chuck, can I ask a question?
It's
So
all about football.
how are you guys planning on doing this now?
Yeah, that's what's next up.
Okay. I didn't know whether you're just gonna jump into it.
Big ball and do this.
Like big
Well, I mean, we got three there of that for OPM. and
Right.
You probably want to get your OPM on board before you go to that right
Absolutely,
there, because
right.
your OPM is going to help you with that right there.
That's absolutely correct. But before we even go to this process, I think we need to, first of all, there's only three of them, so it's going to be easier. And I think we can get some input from Bonnie. You guys certainly need to give us some direction as to how to select the OPM.
Well,
And
it's going to be a little bit time-consuming if you do it the way that we did it with the fire station, because you got to you want to interview them. You
So-
just don't want to select them, you want to bring them in and let them tell you what they're going to do.
do you feel as though they need to come in to us to be interviewed, or what is the process that you see,
Well,
Carl?
the first issue is,
You want to vet them.
the selection committee needs to be sworn in.
Yep.
So we really shouldn't be making any decisions tonight until,
So you make up, we have our three members that are going to be with you for the selection committee. Now you've got to come up with.
So the best thing to do is
Four
pick three
members.
members, swear them in, get the
Four
committee
members.
formed, four
yeah,
members.
yeah, so we have an odd number.
Okay, and then let that group execute.
Exactly.
Correct.
We don't really even need to.
No, you guys, the
rest of you.
four members that you select, along with Carl, Steve, and myself,
All right.
we'll go over it. But what you got to do, is make phone calls to references.
So we can't select four members if Carl's one of them, because he's on this board. If we have four members, we got a quorum. Four members from here plus Carl is a quorum.
Yeah.
Well, but
Well,
Post.
wouldn't he be acting as a PMBC member then, instead of a,
He's sworn in
I
to
don't
be
think it
a member of this, it doesn't matter, because we're talking about something that's.
but if
that's
we're all
material.
sworn in as a separate committee,
Right. separate
doesn't
committee.
that,
And all we're talking about,
Committee.
yeah,
Diane.
you have to go to Diane and get sworn in for a separate committee for it.
it is a
and that,
subcommittee.
and that committee's
Sworn in for
executing
that.
their charter, not this charter.
So we need to establish a subcommittee
Yes,
out of this committee.
yes.
A lot of committees. This is starting to seem like government.
Somebody named
So-
Diane Crowe said we had to do that.
Did she?
Yeah, I don't know about her.
For a selection? Seriously?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Hold on. You got some juice? Yeah, no. All right, so when are we hoping to get together and start calling these folks and checking references and
Well,
things like that?
that's what we want to
That's
decide.
up to you
tonight.
guys.
And so everybody has,
When
so we
can-
have to get together as like a seven-person subcommittee and make phone calls all together in the same room, or can you divide up, like, how does
No,
that work?
you should do it all together.
Okay.
What we did for the fire station, we met at the fire station and used the phone with the speaker on it and called the person, and everybody that was sitting there could ask a question. And then we kept notes on it. I think Steve has got questions, right? Did he do some questions up?
Yeah, I sent them to Chuck, and you can, well, that's the other thing we're going to do tonight, is go through those questions to see if you wanted to add anything, or,
I think what we should
Change the
do
question.
is pick the four members and give them the charge to go do this process. I don't think the rest of the members need to be worrying about the questions. This is a fairly straightforward process. And I think the 4 people that we trust to do it will do it, with, along with the 3 BMBC members, will do fine.
Yep.
And I would argue that the thing to do is to get going.
We gave
Not
our
worry-
OPM,
yeah,
the
exactly.
fire station OPM had 23 hours to come in and interview with us.
Oh, wow.
So
During business
let's
hours
start
too, yes?
soliciting volunteers.
We did it during the day. We made the phone calls during the day, and we selected the 3 people that we wanted for OPM. Told them that what the time period was that we wanted them in there, which was the next night. And one of them backed out because they got the fire station project over in Westford, but the other 2 came in on it.
And where we only have 3 responses to the OPM anyway, that's kind of short-circuit the process, and we pretty much eliminated one of them.
Yeah, one of them doesn't seem to be.
Paper with a paperclip, really bad.
Hey, we didn't specify no paper clips.
But I think, didn't both of those do a lot of fields?
The other 2
You guys were looking at
Yeah,
it too.
the other 2.
Yeah, one of them hadn't done any athletic facilities.
Okay.
And the
So
other,
that's, I
And the
mean,
other
that's
2
kind of how
had
you
experience.
eliminate it.
Absolutely.
The other 2 did. I actually.
All right, let's solicit, who is interested in being
I'll
on
do
the
it.
selection committee? Okay.
It helps if all 4 was there, but we had Tommy Clancy was doing it with us and got called out on the call, so he just couldn't vote on it.
Yeah.
So if somebody gets called away, then,
All right, so Julie, you expressed some interest in it, right?
yeah, but I mean, I can't, like, 23 hours within 1 week during business hours is going to be problematic
Right.
from my job.
no, we gave them 23 hours from the time that we told them they had to come in and do
Oh.
an interview.
Okay.
It won't take that long. It'll be a couple of
Got
meetings.
it. Okay.
And it's this week, or, well, next week. It's ASAP.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, I can do that, check.
And
Yeah, get sworn in this week, and we'll
Yeah.
meet next week.
Okay.
All right, so,
Mike? Yeah.
you guys have
yeah,
any
get to the
daytime
right.
Sheila?
stuff that's available?
Julie?
Julie, it's yes?
Yeah, I mean, I can pop out for a couple of hours here and there, but
We'll make it work.
to do like a full, yeah,
We'll make it work.
Do you have an interest in it?
No,
I was just worried about 23
You don't have any
hours.
interest in it, or you just, you're...
No, I wouldn't be able to
I'm
make
dead
it.
set against it. Michael?
It's hard for me to get
All right, not a
somewhere in the
problem.
day, but,
Tom?
I mean,
I would like to do it, but if there's 4 other people that want to do it...
Say no, he just gave you a chance to say no.
No.
Helping you out with those social cues, kid.
Great, Mike. All right, so...
I'm a yes man.
Chris, you gotta be picking up these facial expressions.
Trying to help you, I told you, this isn't how you do date night.
I would have a hard time doing it during the day.
I'm gonna have some challenges too, but
make it work.
Joe had asked if I'd be a part of it, so I don't
So
know, all my PMBC experience.
We got 4,
So we got
right?
4. We got Mike Fontanella, Sheila Kish, Julie Rupp, and Chuck DeCoste.
Okay.
All right, so we
So
do need to go and
we-
get sworn
yeah.
in separately.
Yeah.
Want to do it?
So
I just don't know if I can do it during the day.
today or tomorrow, you gotta get to,
Today, really?
no, I mean tomorrow or Friday, sorry. I already think, it feels like it's already Thursday. damn it.
All right. All right, so we need to go to town clerk's office and get sworn in for, this is a separate committee. It's a selection committee for,
We need to pick a chairman and co-chair.
we have to meet first, don't we?
We're not even sworn in, you can't do that.
Carl, we'll give it to Steve. He's not here.
No straws.
We'll do that the first time we meet.
But I do recommend that everybody vote for Steve. Because he's not here. All right, so that's good. We got that done.
Okay, what,
Do we have enough for everybody here? or do we
no,
just want
there's
the
not,
subcommittee? All
there's
right.
not. They only did 5 of those, and they did a ton of those right there, so.
Yeah, we got 8 for the design and 5 for the open.
All right, so,
But the subcommittee members can take those tonight.
Correct.
You guys have some already?
No,
Okay.
no.
All right.
all right.
I already
Yeah, I
read
mean,
through
we-
the.
Oh, you guys looked at them already?
Just
Yeah, I looked at them.
OPM.
Okay.
I already wrote notes on them.
Okay, so you
Yeah,
guys are
get
all
a
set.
look.
Yeah.
Whoever's going to be on the committee can grab one of
Yeah, you
those
can
in
take one of
too.
the design.
One of each of the design, okay.
Yeah,
I would like to make those available to the other members, though.
Yeah.
to get input from them as well.
Yep.
Sure.
So.
Well, we did get,
Electronic copies?
yeah.
Yeah.
So let's do that, let's send those
Yeah,
out.
okay.
By email.
So the people in the subcommittee will get the hard copies, and everybody will get a copy of the electronic version.
Is it typical,
We don't have electronic versions, but we
okay. Is it typical to make this type of material available to the general public, or is that?
No.
Yes, okay. I thought it was, I just wanted to
Once it's
let people know that that's standard practice, is to not put that on agenda minutes and things like that, meeting minutes and things like that. Thank you.
All right. RFQ. Do you guys have any questions, concerns? Do you want to have any discussion around the RFQ right now?
I'll look at it.
Yeah, let's take them and look at them.
Okay.
And then maybe come back with questions next week.
You're going to have your OPM, you want to select your OPM, and then your OPM will help you with that, with the select. The OPM that we got for the fire station came into the meeting, and he just about ran the whole meeting when we did the interviews for the architect.
Good.
He asked all the questions.
That sounds like a good idea. They're going to be managing the designer, pretty much anyways. And that's what we're hiring them for, right?
Exactly, yeah.
We know what to say.
Mike, I've kind of, and I don't know, Kyle, you read through those too? You need those?
I don't. All right, I just sent everybody the criteria that's on the subcommittee. All right, so you guys can look at that. That was put together. And is there any other business we need to take care of?
What's on the agenda for next week?
We've got LABA
Oh, that's Lava, okay.
and soccer,
Okay.
football.
No football, right? No football next week,
No,
27th.
FUTBALL.
Chuck, you want to do a tentative day that we get together on this? You want to do this ASAP, right?
Yeah.
I can't do Monday, can't be, I could do Tuesday.
You know what we can do is, once we adjourn from this meeting, let's just, at least the subcommittee minutes, just try to figure it out, just so,
Okay.
does that work?
Yep.
All right, so we've got LABA soccer. I will put something on the agenda for RFQ discussion.
What's that?
I'm going to put something on the agenda for next week for RFQ
Okay.
discussion.
Yeah.
You may want to use your next Wednesday night meeting as a,
Interview?
or your Thursday night meeting as a interview night, if you can.
Okay, but we couldn't, so just the members of the subcommittee would use that?
Yeah. But your other members can be here, but just the subcommittee members would do the interviewing.
All right. I don't have to have the agenda until Tuesday, so.
I mean, you may go through these things here and just say that, you know, this is the one that we want because the other ones aren't going to work out.
Okay, we have a whole scoring system and everything else we have to go through, so. All right.
Now, do we have a requirement for meeting notice for the subcommittee?
It's, yeah, same.
And agenda and all that, yeah.
Any board, commission that's
Sworn in.
subject, that's sworn in, is subject to open meeting law.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody ready to
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
move in second? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
We have to put this room back together.